Our story unfolds in the capital and District 12, 10 years after the war. In the capital, 10 years after the Dark Days, Academy students prepare to mentor the tributes of the 10th Hunger Games. Among them is 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow, assigned to Lucy Gray Baird of District 12, as the damaged city tries to turn a neglected punishment into a broadcast spectacle. Pale morning light settles over the capital in the 10th year after the Dark Days, touching the damaged stone with a color like watered milk. You are standing above the city on a cold terrace, where broken avenues lie beneath scaffolding, canvas roofs, and the thin smoke of household fires. Around you, the capital is rebuilding itself carefully, though much of its old confidence has not yet returned. Marble facades carry fresh patches beside blackened windows. Ornamental towers end abruptly where artillery tore through them. Along the lower streets, workmen move between heaps of fallen masonry, lifting bricks that still bear the dust of civil war. Their hammers answer one another from distant squares, a patient tapping beneath the bells of the capital academy. This is Panem, ruled by the capital over 12 surviving districts, 64 years before Katniss Everdeen enters her 74th Hunger Games. The names are not yet legends. They are still spoken by living people, in rooms where the plaster is cracked and the cupboards are nearly bare. The capital air is cold at this hour, and the wind passes between unfinished buildings with a dry, mineral smell. Pale light rests on the upper edges of shattered walls. Below, carts roll through streets narrowed by timber supports, their wheels ticking over fragments of stone. Dust clings to coats and gathers along windowsills, even where servants have swept only minutes before. Somewhere nearby, a hammer strikes iron, then pauses. A bell sounds from the academy, softened by distance and morning mist. Inside an apartment belonging to the Snow family, Coriolanus Snow is 18 years old and preparing for graduation from the capital academy. He stands before a tall mirror whose silver backing has darkened at the corners. His uniform is immaculate. The seams are straight, the buttons polished, and his blonde hair has been arranged with the care expected from a family whose name remains prestigious. Beneath the uniform, however, the household is poor. The Snow family has lost nearly all its former wealth and influence. The war stripped away estates, investments, servants, and reliable allies. What remains is a famous name, an apartment grown too large for its occupants, and the stubborn obligation to appear prosperous. Coriolanus worries over that appearance every morning. He checks his collar twice. He smooths the fabric across his shoulders. He makes certain that his carefully maintained shoes show no sign of wearing thin. The apartment is quiet except for the small sounds of breakfast. A spoon touches a chipped bowl. A cupboard door closes with a softened wooden knock. The faint smell of boiled cabbage drifts through the rooms, warm but plain, settling into curtains once made for grander surroundings. The polished floor is cold beneath Coriolanus's shoes, despite the rugs laid across its center. Light enters through tall windows with cracked panes, dividing the room into pale rectangles and grey shadows. The furniture stands beneath cloth covers, as though waiting for a better season. His grandmother, known throughout the household and among old capital acquaintances as Grandmam, sits near the window with a blanket over her knees. Her posture remains upright, and her voice carries the remnants of an earlier authority. She remembers the Snow family before the war, when their house received ministers, generals, and celebrated artists. She remembers rooms filled with flowers, silver, and music. Now she counts the remaining candles and asks whether the academy has announced the graduation arrangements. Tigris, Coriolanus's cousin, moves quietly between the stove and the table. She is younger than he is, but the war has given her the careful movements of someone who has long understood scarcity. She has mended his uniform where the thread loosened beneath one sleeve. She has also altered the collar so that it sits higher against his neck, concealing the frayed lining. Tigris works with patience, making small repairs that must remain invisible. You are close enough to feel the apartment's chill gathering around the windows. The glass is clouded at the edges, and a thin line of moisture runs down one pane. Beyond it, the capital rises in unfinished layers, pale stone interrupted by scaffolding and dark gaps. A construction crane turns slowly against the morning sky. Its cable creaks. A flock of birds lifts from a roof without tiles, circles once, and disappears behind a damaged tower. Inside, the smell of cabbage remains gentle and persistent, mingling with soap, old wool, and the faint metallic scent of cold radiators. Coriolanus has learned to make poverty look like discipline. He eats little before important occasions, claiming that a lighter breakfast helps him think. He avoids asking for new clothes. He remembers which shops still extend credit to the Snow name, and which shopkeepers have begun to look directly at the cuffs of his sleeves. He knows that the family cannot afford another public embarrassment. A single stain, a poorly chosen seat, or an absent invitation may become evidence that the Snows are no longer what they once were. At the academy, however, Coriolanus remains visible. His grades are excellent. His manners are precise. His name is still printed in formal lists and spoken by teachers who remember his father. Capital society has not forgotten the Snows, though it has begun to wonder whether forgetting them might soon become easier. Graduation offers one final chance for Coriolanus to stand among the strongest students, beneath bright lights, and before the families who shape appointments and friendships. The academy stands in a district where the war damage has been repaired more quickly. Its central dome is whole, though the surrounding walls still show faint lines where stone has been replaced. Tall banners hang between the columns. Their colors are rich, but the fabric has been reused, and old stitching shows where the emblems have been changed. Students cross the courtyard in dark uniforms, their voices low beneath the bells. Construction hammers sound beyond the eastern wing, where workmen are restoring a gallery damaged during the rebellion. The Capital Academy smells of chalk, damp wool, and dust warmed by sunlight. Cold, polished floors run beneath the students' carefully maintained shoes, reflecting their dark shapes in long, broken strips. Along the corridors, new stone is lighter than the old walls. Brass lamps burn even in daylight, their flames trembling whenever a door opens. The academy bells mark each hour with deep notes that travel through the corridors and settle beneath the distant rhythm of construction. Dust moves slowly in the beams above the staircases, turning in the air like pale ash. The war ended approximately 10 years before the 10th Hunger Games, but the capital still carries it in its buildings and habits. The dark days were not a distant conflict remembered only through monuments. They had reached every household. They had emptied streets, closed theaters, interrupted schools, and divided families according to loyalties that were not always spoken aloud. The districts had risen against the capital, and the rebellion had nearly broken the country into separate pieces. District 13 was believed to have been destroyed during the rebellion. Its name appears in official histories as both warning and conclusion. The capital teaches that District 13 was eliminated when its leaders refused submission. Yet older citizens sometimes lower their voices when the district is mentioned, as if destruction were not the same as certainty. In the capital, uncertainty is treated as a dangerous form of memory. The remaining 12 districts continue to supply the capital with food, minerals, energy, textiles, machinery, and labor. They are watched by soldiers, taxed by officials, and reminded that the uprising failed. Their deprivation is not merely an accident of the post-war years. It is part of the new order being built over the ruins. Cold air enters the academy through doors that do not close properly. It moves along the marble floor and slips beneath the hems of uniforms. You feel it around your ankles as you pass beneath the high arches. The stone smells faintly of rain, although the sky is clear. In one corridor, a plasterer has left a ladder against the wall, and wet white paste glistens beside a row of portraits. The painted faces of former academy directors watch over the repairs with composed expressions. From the lower courtyard comes the clang of metal, followed by the muffled shouts of laborers. The Hunger Games were created as punishment for the district's failed uprising. Each year, children are chosen from the districts and sent to fight until one remains alive. The arrangement is presented as a public obligation, a reminder written in blood. It is not yet the polished spectacle known to later generations. There are no perfected rituals, no familiar pageantry, and no confidence that the capital audience will enjoy watching. Many capital citizens dislike the early games. Some consider them vulgar. Others find them difficult to understand because the children are brought into a small arena with little preparation, and the violence appears crude rather than grand. Families who survive the war often have no appetite for another display of death. The capital has suffered too much material damage and social disruption to feel entirely secure in its authority. Nevertheless, the games continue. The districts must be punished. The capital must appear strong. The government must show that rebellion has a cost that cannot be forgotten. Every year, the names are drawn, and every year, the people of Panem are required to watch. The arena is not yet a place of glittering technology and carefully designed drama. The tributes receive little guidance. The audience is given no polished stories to follow. The event remains closer to an old punishment ritual than to entertainment. It is imposed upon the capital almost as much as upon the districts, and the dissatisfaction surrounding it has begun to trouble the authorities. You hear the academy bells again as Coriolanus steps into a classroom lined with tall windows. Their glass is clean, but beyond it the city remains damaged. Roofs are being rebuilt. Streets are being cleared. A monument stands behind temporary fencing, its base scorched and its inscription partly missing. Students take their seats beneath maps of Panem. The 12 districts are marked in precise colors, while District 13 is represented by a blank space and a note stating that it was destroyed. Coriolanus sits near the front. His classmates come from households with more money than his own, though not all of them possess a more honored name. Sejanus Plinth is present, the son of a wealthy family from District 2, whose fortune grew during the war. His capital manners remain imperfect, and some students treat him as an outsider despite his recent elevation. Lysistrata Vickers sits 2 rows away, composed and observant. Hilarious Heavensby leans back in his chair, confident in the protection of a powerful family. Their names, and the districts behind them, form the social landscape Coriolanus must cross. The room holds the cool smell of ink and stone. Sunlight touches the edges of wooden desks, leaving their centers in shadow. A draft passes beneath the door and lifts a loose page from a nearby table. You watch it slide over the polished floor before a student catches it with one shoe. The bells fade into the distance. Behind the walls, hammers continue their slow work, striking beneath the orderly voices of the teachers. The students are told that the 10th Hunger Games will require improvement. The government wants the capital to care. The districts must feel watched, and the citizens must feel involved. The games cannot remain a neglected punishment hidden inside an unpleasant broadcast. If no one pays attention, the ritual loses its purpose. If the capital refuses to watch, the districts may begin to believe that its anger has weakened. Coriolanus listens closely. He understands that the games are not merely an event concerning the districts. They are becoming a test of capital leadership. The student who can offer a better form of presentation may gain the attention of the academy, the government, and the families whose support determines a young person's future. Coriolanus has no fortune with which to enter public life. He has only his intelligence, his appearance, and the Snow name. That name remains prestigious, but prestige cannot be eaten. It cannot pay for coal. It cannot replace a damaged roof or fill an empty pantry. The Snow household survives through caution, memory, and the unwilling generosity of people who still fear being seen as disloyal to an old family. At the Snow apartment, the afternoon light has thinned to silver. The windows show a capital washed in cold weather. Rain has darkened the repaired stone, making the new sections stand out against the older walls. Water gathers in shallow hollows along the street. Workers carry boards beneath dripping canvas. A cart passes slowly, its wheels pressing through wet dust. Inside, the floor has been polished until it reflects the lamps, though the polish cannot warm the tiles. Grandmam speaks of appearances. She tells Coriolanus that the Snows must remain above ordinary concern. She says that hunger can be endured, but humiliation cannot. Tigris says nothing at first. She folds a tablecloth into a smaller square so that the worn edge will not show. Coriolanus watches her hands and understands that she has heard the same conversation many times. The family's reduced circumstances are hidden from most of the capital. Their dining room still contains silverware wrapped in cloth. Their curtains are heavy enough to suggest wealth. Their entrance hall has a carved mirror, though one corner is cracked. When visitors come, Tigris serves tea in cups that do not match, arranging them so that the differences appear intentional. The household has become a theater of restraint, with every object placed to suggest that nothing important has been lost. Rain makes a soft pattern against the tall windows. Water moves through the gutters and falls in steady threads beside the building. The faint smell of boiled cabbage returns from the kitchen, mixed with damp wool and smoke from a small fire. A chair creaks as Grandmam shifts beneath her blanket. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe knocks twice and goes quiet. The apartment feels larger in the evening, its unused rooms holding the cold like deep wells. The announcement comes during a formal academy gathering. Students stand in rows beneath the dome, while teachers and government representatives occupy the raised platform. The banners above them are bright enough to conceal their repairs. At the center hangs the seal of Panem, newly painted over a patch of stone where the war left a dark stain. Coriolanus keeps his shoulder straight as the headmaster describes the coming 10th Hunger Games. This year, the graduating students will mentor the tributes. Each student will be assigned a boy or girl from one of the districts. The task is described as an honor and a responsibility. Mentors will help shape the public presentation of the tributes, give them names and stories, and encourage capital citizens to watch. Their work may determine whether the games become accepted as part of national life. Coriolanus feels the room change around him. Students who had been restless become attentive. Teachers glance towards the platform. Some faces show concern, while others reveal the first signs of calculation. The opportunity is sudden and enormous. A successful mentor might receive patronage, invitations, and a place in the new order. A failed mentor might be remembered only as part of an embarrassing experiment. The dome carries every sound with unusual clarity. Fabric shifts above you. A cough travels from the back row and disappears beneath the next bell. The air smells of wet stone, lamp oil, and the faint dust released by the banners whenever the heating vents stir them. Light from the high windows falls across the students' shoes, showing small scratches in the leather. Outside, rain touches the repaired roof. Beneath the academy, construction hammers continue their patient, distant rhythm. Coriolanus thinks of his family before he thinks of the tributes. He thinks of the apartment, the unpaid accounts, the careful meals, and the narrow space between respectability and disgrace. He thinks of Grandmam's insistence that a Snow must never look defeated. He thinks of Tigris repairing garments late at night, her needle passing through cloth while the lamps burn low. Then he learns that each mentor will receive a prize. The reward is connected to academic performance, and the highest-ranking student will receive the plinth prize, a substantial sum offered by the wealthy Plinth family. The amount would restore the Snow household for years. It could provide food, coal, clothing, and the means to preserve their social position. For Coriolanus, the prize is not an abstract honor. It is the difference between continuing to appear powerful and being quietly abandoned by the capital. The possibility settles over him with the weight of a winter coat. He must win. He must make the games matter. He must give the capital something it has not yet found in the children it has been ordered to watch. His assigned tribute will come from District 12, a place associated with coal, poverty, and distance from the capital's polished avenues. The platform lamps cast a warm glow across the dome, but the edges of the room remain cold. Shadows gather beneath the balconies and along the old stonework. You smell rain on the students' coats and chalk dust beneath the scent of burning oil. A banner stirs overhead, revealing a seam that runs through the painted emblem. Far away, beyond the academy grounds, a hammer strikes a rhythm against a wall. It is slow and regular, almost like a clock. At the reaping, the districts will provide 24 children. Their names will be drawn in public ceremonies, and their families will stand beneath the gaze of soldiers and officials. The capital will call the process fair because the names are selected by chance. The districts will understand that chance has been arranged inside a system built upon punishment. The difference between those meanings will remain at the center of Panem. Coriolanus has never visited District 12. He knows it through reports, maps, and the expressions of capital citizens when its name is mentioned. The district is poor even by the standards of the post-war years. Its people work in coal mines. Its streets are darkened by soot. Its children grow up beneath conditions that most capital families would consider unbearable, yet their suffering has become ordinary to the government. The contrast between capital privilege and district deprivation is not hidden. It is displayed in the clothing worn by officials, the food served at government tables, and the clean water flowing through the academy fountains. It can be measured in the distance between a warm capital apartment and a mining town where coal dust covers the windows. It is the moral landscape on which Coriolanus begins to move. Evening settles quietly across the city. Pale light withdraws from the damaged capital stone, leaving the repaired sections grey and the ruins almost black. Lamps appear along the lower streets, each one trembling in the wind. The hammers continue for a while, then fade as workers leave the construction sites. Dust remains in the half-repaired corridors, caught in corners where the lamps do not reach. The cold, polished floors hold the last reflections of passing footsteps. Coriolanus returns home, carrying the notice of his assignment. The paper is clean and official. Its edges are sharp. His name appears in dark lettering, followed by the name of District 12. Grandmam reads it beneath the lamp. Tigris stands behind her, one hand resting on the back of a chair. No one speaks for several moments. Outside, the capital continues to rebuild. The war has ended, but its absence has not yet become peace. District 13 is believed to have been destroyed. 12 districts remain under capital rule. The 10th Hunger Games approach as an obligation, a punishment, and a public problem that Coriolanus Snow must somehow solve. The apartment grows quieter. The cabbage smell fades as the kitchen cools. The lamps burn softly against the old walls. Beneath Coriolanus's shoes, the polished floor is cold and smooth. He places the notice on the table and rests his hand beside it. The paper does not move. Beyond the windows, rain begins again. It touches the scaffolding and gathers on broken stone. One drop follows another down the glass, narrowing the city into wavering lights. The capital is still scarred by war. The academy bells have fallen silent. Only a distant hammer remains, faint beneath the weather, marking the slow work of repair. The paper remains beneath your hand as rain gathers strength against the windows, and the silence around the table seems to wait for your decision. At last, the academy bell sounds from somewhere deeper in the building, a thin metallic note traveling through corridors emptied by the storm. You lift the notice and fold it carefully, keeping the creases straight, because neat paper appears more trustworthy than hurried paper. The 10th Hunger Games are to receive a new arrangement. Dean Casca Highbottom has written, and the academy students are to participate. Each student will be assigned a tribute, either a boy or a girl brought from one of the districts, and each student will serve as mentor. The word seems harmless when you first read it, almost scholarly, as though the tributes were pupils needing guidance through a difficult examination. Yet the list beneath the announcement makes the purpose plain. The winning mentor is promised a substantial prize connected with university study. Money for tuition, books, rooms, and the long years of education stands behind the formal language. The reward is large enough to alter a life, and your household requires precisely such an alteration. Grandmother's rooms are carefully maintained, but careful maintenance cannot create money from the empty spaces between the walls. The Snow name still carries an old dignity, while the Snow purse has become thin enough to show the light. Your future education depends upon appearances, endurance, and the hope that some forgotten remnant of fortune may yet be recovered. Dry classroom air lingers in the hall, carrying chalk dust from rooms where lessons have ended, and blackboards remain clouded with unfinished equations. Rainwater trembles along the window frames, while the city beyond the glass breaks into pale reflections beneath the scaffolding. Somewhere below, a cart rolls over uneven paving, its wheels producing a hollow rhythm beneath the low muttering of the weather. The notice feels slightly rough beneath your fingertips, and the black ink has raised a faint ridge where the pen pressed into the paper. Nearby, other pupils stand in small groups, holding their own copies and speaking in restrained voices. You hear paper lists rustling as names are compared, folded, opened, and examined once more beneath the yellow corridor lamps. Capital pupils have always understood competition, even when it is dressed as cooperation. The subdued murmur around you rises and falls like water beneath a bridge, composed of surnames, districts, guesses, and private calculations. No one yet speaks seriously about the dead children who will fill the arena. They speak instead of prizes, university places, family expectations, and the possibility of being remembered at the academy. Highbottom has chosen the hour carefully, because the students are still gathered beneath the rain-streaked windows when he enters the hall. His robes hang plainly from his narrow frame, and his expression gives away nothing beyond the tired authority of the dean. Dr. Volumnia Gall follows several paces behind him, carrying no papers and displaying no visible interest in the students. As head game maker, she possesses the power to shape the games, yet she moves through the hall with the detached manner of someone inspecting a laboratory. The pupils quiet themselves gradually, one conversation after another diminishing, until only the loudspeakers remain audible. Their metallic echo returns from the academy's stone surfaces, faintly distorted, as if the building itself were repeating Highbottom's arrival. Highbottom stops beneath the great clock, where the brass hands mark the late afternoon with solemn accuracy. He tells you that the 10th Hunger Games will differ from the previous 9. The change, he explains, will begin at the academy, where the brightest students will be assigned individual tributes. Each mentor will be expected to study the assigned child, understand the child's qualities, and help make that tribute interesting to watch. He does not say that the capital has grown tired of seeing children die without knowing their names. He says that public interest must be increased because the broadcast remains technically limited and socially neglected. The games are shown in certain rooms through equipment that often fails, reaches few households, and inspires little more than discomfort. People may understand that an event is taking place. Highbottom continues without feeling any reason to follow it. The new mentoring system is intended to place a human face beside the violence, although he does not use those words. You listen while rain ticks against the tall windows, and the promise of university study begins to shine more brightly than the rest. Dr. Gall watches the students as Highbottom describes the arrangement, her pale attention moving from face to face. The announcement contains a second test, though no one says so openly. You and your classmates are being asked to rescue a spectacle that the capital has never learned to value. The work will be presented as an academic project, but the prize gives it the pressure of an examination. Highbottom reads the pairings aloud from his list, allowing each name to settle into the room before continuing. District 1 receives a student whose family owns several factories and entertains senators at private dinners. District 2 is given to an eloquent boy with a reputation for persuasive speeches and a talent for public performance. The districts known for strength, discipline, and useful production produce immediate interest among the students. A few pupils glance at one another when the agricultural districts are named, already guessing which tributes may be easier to present. Then Highbottom reaches District 12. Your name is followed by Lucy Gray Baird. For a moment, the words seem to belong to another student, perhaps someone seated farther along the table. District 12 is spoken again, and Lucy Gray Baird remains printed beside your name. You feel the prize receding before you have even touched it. The district is associated with coal, poverty, distance, and a population whose importance to the capital appears largely practical. A tribute from District 12 is unlikely to attract viewers accustomed to polished voices, expensive manners, or the confidence of districts closer to power. The pairing may be fair according to Highbottom's list, but fairness has little connection with victory. Around you, chalk dust rests on the ledges beneath the windows, settling into the fine scratches left by years of cleaning. The lamps cast a weak amber light over the students' hands, revealing ink stains across knuckles and along the sides of fingers. A boy from the second row rubs a blot of blue ink against his thumb and leaves the color darker than before. Several paper lists lie open on the long table, their edges lifting whenever a draft enters from the stairwell. The loudspeakers give a brief metallic crackle, then fall silent, leaving the hall filled with breathing and rain. The capital pupils compare pairings in lowered voices, and the sound is subdued because no one wants Highbottom to hear the cruelty of the first judgments. You catch fragments concerning appearance, dialect, district reputation, and the likelihood of a tribute surviving long enough to become memorable. Those who receive the stronger districts are congratulated quietly, as if their pairings were appointments to desirable offices. Those assigned to remote or impoverished districts are offered sympathetic looks that conceal private relief. You fold your copy of the list into quarters and place it inside your coat. Lucy Gray Baird is now attached to your name, and your name is attached to a prize you cannot afford to lose. Highbottom reminds the class that the tributes have already been brought to the capital under guard. They are not guests, and they are not pupils in any ordinary sense. They have been removed from their districts, transported in guarded vehicles, and placed within the capital as objects of public experiment. The academy students will meet them shortly, after the head game maker has completed the first arrangements. You picture District 12 without having seen it, imagining dark hills, rough roads, and homes where coal dust enters through every seam. Your first thought is not of Lucy Gray's fear. It is of the university, and the possibility that the prize might preserve the future your family has promised you. This thought is unpleasant only because it is so immediate. You understand that the assignment has given you an obligation you did not choose, yet the obligation appears useful if handled correctly. Personal advancement and moral responsibility stand close together, indistinguishable in the half-light of the academy corridor. The rain has cooled the windows, and the stone beneath your shoes seems to hold the dampness gathered from the city. A smell of wet plaster enters through a narrow opening where the frame has warped. The academy has been repaired in sections, leaving fresh wood beside blackened stone and new brass beside old iron. You hear a distant hammer striking scaffolding, each impact softened by the walls. The lists rustle whenever a student shifts position, producing a dry whisper beneath the metallic hum of the loudspeaker. Some pupils begin copying their pairings into notebooks, while others write down questions about the districts. Ink spreads slightly on the cheapest paper, making the letters appear heavier around the edges. The corridor carries the scent of dust, wool, rain, and the faint mineral sharpness of chalk. You remain near the table until the other students have moved away, keeping Lucy Gray Baird's name in your mind. When you reach the Snow apartment, the rain has become a fine gray curtain over the streets. Grandmother is seated beside the small fire, with her back straight and her hands resting upon the arms of the chair. Tigress is sorting household receipts across the table, arranging them by size, because the figures themselves offer little comfort. You tell them about the assignment, and the phrase university prize changes the air more completely than the mention of the games. Grandmother asks which district has been given to you. You answer District 12. Tigress pauses with one receipt between her fingers, and the paper trembles once before she places it beside the others. No one says that the pairing is unfortunate. The silence performs the calculation on their behalf. A district with few resources may produce a tribute who is difficult to clothe, difficult to present, and difficult to make visible to capital viewers. Your family understands the rules of advancement, even when the rules are concealed beneath ceremonial language. The prize might cover your university study, but only if your tribute becomes the most interesting among 24 children. That distinction seems almost impossible, and impossibility has a habit of becoming expensive. You stand beside the fire while the coal settles inward, releasing a soft collapse beneath the iron grate. Warmth touches one side of your face, while the other remains cool from the draft moving under the door. Grandmother's room carries the familiar smell of old fabric, polished wood, and ashes that have been carefully conserved. Tigress smooths the receipts into a single stack, though the gesture cannot make the totals gentler. Outside, boots pass along the pavement, and their sound fades beneath the rain before reaching the corner. You remove the folded list from your coat and open it beside the firelight. Lucy Gray Baird appears again, printed in narrow black letters, her name made official by the Academy's ink. The district number stands beside it like a small closed gate. You read the pairing 3 times, not because the meaning changes, but because repetition makes the fact easier to hold. By the following morning, the Academy has become a place of sustained speculation. The students arrive earlier than usual, and the corridors fill with comparisons before the first lessons begin. One mentor has already learned that his tribute can sing. Another has been told that a girl from District 4 is an excellent swimmer. A student assigned to District 10 claims that her tribute has a remarkable memory for faces, although no one knows who supplied the information. The Academy pupils search for anything that might make a child distinct. They ask about accents, occupations, injuries, family histories, animals, songs, religious customs, and unusual talents. Each detail is considered for its possible value on a broadcast that few people presently bother to watch. Mentors are expected to help their tributes become visible to capital viewers. Visibility, in this setting, means more than appearing on a screen. It means creating a reason for a household to keep the receiver switched on when the arena begins to fill with blood. The students understand the problem instinctively because they have grown up beneath the capital's appetite for novelty. You hear them discussing rival approaches in the stairwell, their voices polite but edged with possession. Some want to make their tributes heroic. Others prefer tragedy, eccentricity, beauty, menace, or a story of unexpected endurance. The project begins as a competition among academy students, and the competition gives their curiosity a sharp, practical purpose. Their desks are covered with district maps, copied reports, personal notes, and lists of possible questions. Chalk marks appear on the classroom boards, dividing the tributes according to perceived strengths and weaknesses. Dust floats through the dry air each time a sleeve brushes the board's wooden frame. The room smells of old paper and the bitter residue of extinguished lamps. Pupils lean over their notebooks, whispering while their fingers become dark with ink. The murmur of capital students comparing pairings passes between the desks like a second lesson. A loudspeaker mounted above the doorway emits a metallic echo when the administrative office announces the arrival of the tributes. The sound is unpleasantly flat, and several students glance upward before pretending not to have done so. You are told that the children will be housed temporarily in the old animal facility beneath the arena. The building has been cleaned, though no amount of scrubbing can remove its former purpose. You walk there with the other mentors through a covered passage smelling of wet stone. Guarded doors wait at the end of the corridor, and peacekeepers stand beside them with rifles held close to their bodies. The capital has brought the tributes under guard because the games are still an instrument of control rather than entertainment. No one has yet imagined the elaborate later system of stylists, costumes, cosmetic preparation, and carefully staged public appearances. The children have been delivered in ordinary clothing, tired from travel, uncertain of the language used around them. Their faces carry the marks of their districts more plainly than any costume could have done. When the doors open, the mentors enter the enclosure one by one. Your first sight of Lucy Gray Baird does not resemble the image you had formed. She's not dressed in the dark, practical clothing you expected from District 12. A patterned dress hangs around her, dusty from the journey, and the colors remain strangely vivid beneath the facility's weak lamps. Her posture is guarded, but her eyes are awake. You notice the way she studies the room before studying you, as if danger might be present in the walls, the ceiling, or the floor. Lucy Gray Baird says your name with an unfamiliar rhythm. The sound is softer than you expect, yet it carries farther than the surrounding whispers. For one brief moment, District 12 becomes more than a number beside a printed name. The room is cold enough that your breath barely shows, although the lamps produce a faint warmth over the concrete. Moisture clings to the iron bars of the old enclosures, gathering in small beads along the joints. The air tastes of rust, dust, and disinfectant. A pipe somewhere overhead knocks at irregular intervals, sending a dull vibration through the ceiling. Other tributes shift on benches, their shoes scraping against the floor in small nervous movements. Fabric brushes fabric whenever a child turns, forming a soft, continuous friction beneath the guard's measured steps. Lucy Gray's dress carries a trace of damp earth and crushed leaves, a scent that seems out of place beneath the capital. Light from the corridor enters through the open door and divides the room into pale rectangles. You stand inside one of those rectangles while she remains near the shadowed wall. The distance between you is only a few paces, but the districts seem to occupy it. She tells you that she can sing, although she does not present the fact as a talent offered for inspection. Her voice moves through the enclosure with a quiet control that makes several tributes look in her direction. The guards hear it, the mentors hear it, and somewhere beyond the corridor, a technician pauses beside a receiver. You recognize at once that the voice could make her visible. The recognition brings relief, followed by discomfort, because you have measured its usefulness before asking whether she is frightened. Lucy Gray continues speaking, explaining that she has performed in places where people gathered close around the music. You listen carefully, collecting details that might become valuable when the broadcast begins. Her district remains poor, remote, and unlikely to attract attention by itself. Yet the girl's name is memorable, her dress is unusual, and her singing gives the capital something to repeat. The contest among the mentors changes shape inside your thoughts. It is no longer merely a matter of choosing the strongest child or presenting the most appealing story. You must make Lucy Gray Baird matter to people who have not yet decided to watch. Your ambition becomes entangled with her survival, though the connection was forced upon you by Highbottom's list. The obligation is not noble in its origin, but it grows heavier as you stand beside her. The enclosure's narrow windows admit a colourless morning, and rain has left the glass opaque. Pale water slides downward in crooked paths, breaking the outside world into wavering fragments. A guard's coat smells faintly of wet wool when he passes near the doorway. The concrete floor retains the night's cold, and the metal benches conduct it through the thin fabric of the tribute's clothing. A distant loudspeaker gives a burst of static that resembles a struck wire. Paper rustles outside as officials carry schedules from one room to another. The noise is administrative, almost peaceful, and therefore difficult to reconcile with the children waiting under guard. Lucy Gray's fingers move once along the seam of her sleeve. The gesture is small, but you understand that fear has many quiet forms. You ask about her home, and she answers with fragments concerning music, family, and roads bordered by dark trees. Each fragment adds a little color to District 12. The color is not enough to erase the poverty, but it prevents the district from remaining blank. Other mentors begin similar conversations, and the facility fills with uneven exchanges. A student assigned to District 7 asks about woodcutting. Someone from District 11 speaks of orchards and harvests. The mentors lean close, recording impressions in their minds and sometimes upon slips of paper. No one has been given a handbook for this work. The system is new, improvised, and uncertain, which allows every student to pretend that success will depend upon personal brilliance. You return to the academy with Lucy Gray's voice following you through the corridors. Highbottom has arranged for the mentors to attend lessons beside the tributes during the first stage of the project. The pupils are expected to observe, question, and report. Dr. Gall wants information, Highbottom wants interest, and the capital wants a spectacle that can be understood without effort. These purposes overlap only partially. A tribute may be interesting because of a skilled hand, an unusual belief, a vivid story, or a face that remains in memory. The students begin preparing small summaries for the broadcast technicians. The summaries are not yet called profiles, and no one has developed the language later used to shape public affection. They are simple descriptions, handwritten and revised beneath the classroom lamps. Your page begins with Lucy Gray Baird, District 12, singer. You add her clothing, her manner, her family connections, and the fact that she speaks as though every sentence has been measured for sound. The ink stains the side of your finger when you turn the page. You rub the mark against your thumb and spread it into a dark crescent. Around you, the academy pupils trade information with increasing intensity. A mentor who once seemed uninterested now claims that his tribute can identify birds by their calls. Another pupil has discovered a childhood story involving a flood and writes it down in 3 different forms. The murmur becomes denser, layered with rustling paper lists and the tapping of pens. A few students laugh quietly when their descriptions become exaggerated. Others object that exaggeration will not survive the first public questions. You hear the metallic echo of a loudspeaker carrying an instruction from the administrative wing. The announcement is repeated twice, each version less distinct than the one before. Dry chalk dust settles upon the shoulders of dark academy uniforms. The classroom windows remain closed against the wet weather, trapping the scent of stone and old paper. The air is difficult to breathe deeply, although no one mentions it. You sit at your desk and revise Lucy Gray's description until the page contains more than her district. This is the first alteration the mentoring project produces. A tribute is no longer only a body chosen for the arena. The child becomes a name, and the name begins to acquire a voice, a history, and a set of associations. The games have not become humane. The threat remains exactly where it was, waiting in the arena with its weapons and cameras. But the attention surrounding the deaths has begun to move towards the people who may die. Highbottom's intention becomes clearer as the days pass. He wants viewers to wonder which tribute will survive, which will suffer, and which will be remembered. The mentors are building the first faint outline of a human interest narrative. It is faint because the broadcast is still technically limited and socially neglected. It is human because the students keep returning to names rather than numbers. Lucy Gray Baird is spoken in the hall, in the classroom, beneath the stairway, and beside the guarded facility. District 12 is repeated whenever her pairing is discussed. Coriolanus Snow appears beside her in every list, a pairing that continues to seem unfair to your prospects. Yet each repetition strengthens the connection between you. The prize still matters, and the future of your education still depends upon money. You remain determined to win. At the same time, you begin to understand that winning may require more than finding a clever method of self-promotion. You must persuade Capital viewers that Lucy Gray deserves their attention before the arena persuades them otherwise. The afternoon light grows dim over the academy, turning the corridor windows into grey mirrors. Rain has stopped, but drops fall from the scaffolding in slow intervals, striking the pavement far below. The repaired stones outside hold a darker colour than the older masonry. Inside, the lamps hum faintly above the long tables. Their warmth reaches the tops of the students' heads, but leaves their hands cool. Paper lists lie in overlapping rows, covered with arrows, circles, names, and district numbers. Ink has dried on several pages in uneven pools where pens were left uncapped. Chalk dust gathers in the grooves of the floorboards near the blackboard. A loose shutter moves somewhere above you, producing a soft wooden knock at regular intervals. The loudspeakers remain silent, but their metal housings catch the weak light. Through the open door, you hear pupils comparing pairings in voices that have become less amused. The project has begun to feel real. You read Lucy Gray Baird's name once more before closing your notebook. The next morning, Highbottom announces that the mentors will accompany their tributes before selected Capital audiences. There will be no elaborate preparation, no skilled stylists, and no transformation intended to make the children appear grander than they are. The Capital has not yet developed the later system of costumes, cosmetics, and carefully designed presentation. The tributes will be seen largely as they arrived, with travel dust upon their shoes and district clothing upon their backs. This limitation troubles some mentors who believe that a proper appearance can overcome almost any disadvantage. You suspect that Lucy Gray's dress may already possess more character than anything the Academy could provide. The children are brought into a public chamber beneath guard, and the mentors are positioned along the walls. A small number of officials sit in the front rows, accompanied by technicians and curious pupils. The audience is too sparse to resemble a celebration. Many seats remain empty, and the broadcast equipment gives off a faint electrical smell. Lucy Gray waits beside you with her hands folded, while the guard behind her watches the room. The Capital pupils shift in their seats, whispering about the tributes as though examining rare specimens. When Lucy Gray begins to sing, the chamber's scattered attention gathers around her. Her voice reaches the upper balconies and returns softened by the stone. The technicians look towards one another, and one adjusts a dial beneath the nearest receiver. You do not know whether the broadcast is being watched beyond the room. You know only that people have stopped whispering. This is the first small success of the mentoring project. A child from District 12 has become audible inside the Capital. The room smells of damp coats, hot electrical parts, and dust warmed by old lamps. Rain has begun again beyond the high windows, though it is too distant to be seen clearly. Water moves through gutters somewhere above the chamber, producing a muted rushing sound. The benches are polished smooth by years of use, and their wooden edges press against the backs of your legs. Lucy Gray's sleeve brushes your hand when she turns towards the audience. The cloth is slightly coarse, with a loose thread near the cuff. Her voice leaves a vibration in the air that seems to continue after the final note has ended. A technician's pencil scratches against a form. Someone in the front row clears his throat and then remains silent. The loudspeaker above the stage releases a metallic hum before settling into stillness. You notice chalk marks on the floor where stage positions have been measured and corrected. They form pale lines beneath the feet of the tributes. The marks suggest order, while the children themselves remain uncertain and uncontained. Lucy Gray looks towards you after the song. You tell her that she has done well, and the words feel insufficient beside the danger surrounding her. She asks whether the audience liked it. You answer that they listened. For the moment, listening is the only evidence available. The project continues through interviews, observations, and meetings held in rooms that have not been designed for such work. Each mentor learns to look for the detail that might remain in a stranger's mind. A boy from District 9 recites the names of every grain he has planted. A girl from District 8 knows how to repair a torn seam with almost invisible stitches. The tributes are still treated as competitors, yet their differences begin to gather meaning. The Academy students develop informal rankings based upon charm, skill, danger, sorrow, and novelty. The competition among them becomes intense enough to produce arguments over wording. One mentor claims that a quiet tribute can never attract an audience. Another replies that mystery may hold attention longer than noise. You say little during these disputes because Lucy Gray has already shown that volume and silence can coexist. Her story is not easily reduced to one quality. She is a singer, a traveler, a poor girl, a guarded child, and a person who understands how closely others are watching. Your task is to arrange those qualities without allowing the arrangement to become false. That responsibility does not belong to the prize. It belongs to Lucy Gray, though she never asked you to carry it. The Academy Hall grows warmer as afternoon lessons continue, yet the air retains the dryness of chalk and old plaster. Windows stand open a fraction, admitting the smell of rain over stone. Lists are pinned to notice boards, and their corners lift whenever someone passes. The paper makes a faint, repeated whisper, different from the nervous rustling of the students' private notes. Ink marks cover the margins of the official pairings. District 12 has been circled several times in red pencil. Lucy Gray Baird is underlined in blue. Your own name appears beside hers in a hand you do not recognize. The loudspeakers carry occasional announcements from the arena, and their metallic echo travels through the stairwells. Each message seems to come from a great distance, even when the words concern rooms nearby. Capital pupils continue comparing pairings, but their voices now include admiration as well as dismissal. The students who once pitied District 12 begin asking how Lucy Gray's song was received. A few request copies of your notes. You give them nothing important. The prize remains in your thoughts, but possession of information has become another form of competition. You begin to see how attention behaves. It moves towards vividness, then towards sympathy, and finally towards anticipation. The games have not yet supplied those feelings on their own. The mentors must create the conditions in which those feelings can begin. Highbottom's innovation, therefore, reaches beyond the simple assignment of students to tributes. It places interpretation between the audience and the arena. For the first time, the deaths will be accompanied by stories that begin before the weapons are raised. You recognize the danger in that arrangement. A story can make a person visible, but visibility can also make a person desirable to watch as suffering. Lucy Gray is safer when people care about her, yet the same attention may bring more eyes to her death. This contradiction follows you through the academy. By evening, the corridors have emptied, and the building has returned to its old silence. A last line of light lies beneath the door of the administrative office. The floor has been polished again, and your reflection breaks across the dark wood beneath your shoes. Rainwater shines on the steps outside, carrying small pieces of straw towards the drains. The city gives off the smell of wet brick and coal smoke. From the arena, machinery answers with a distant grinding sound. The sound fades, returns, and fades once more as the wind moves through the damaged streets. You hold your notebook against your chest, while the loudspeakers remain quiet above you. Inside the cover, Lucy Gray's name has been written repeatedly in several forms. Lucy Gray Baird. District 12, Coriolanus Snow. The words have begun to look like a single sentence, although you know they describe separate lives. You think of university rooms, lecture halls, and the education promised by a prize no one in your family can replace. You think of the guarded enclosure and the cold concrete beneath Lucy Gray's shoes. Between those images lies the assignment Highbottom placed upon the academy. It has offered you a route towards advancement while fastening your prospects to a frightened girl from District 12. You did not choose the obligation. Still, you carry it down the stairs. The first faint outline of the game's new story is already visible in the city's damp darkness. There is the dean who assigned the mentors, the head game maker who observes them, and the pupils who compete to make their tributes memorable. There are the children brought under guard, standing beneath unfamiliar lights while strangers search their lives for something worth broadcasting. There is Lucy Gray Baird, whose voice has crossed the capital more successfully than any official announcement. There is District 12, once a number on a list, now attached to a song. And there is you, Coriolanus Snow, pursuing a university prize, while learning that ambition can become responsible for another person. The rain moves softly across the roof, and the repaired city listens beneath it. In the academy, paper lists wait upon their boards. Chalk dust lies undisturbed in the empty classrooms. Ink dries upon the fingers of students who have not yet gone home. The metallic loudspeakers hang above the corridors, ready to carry the next instruction. The capital pupils will compare their pairings again in the morning. They will speak of strengths, weaknesses, voices, faces, districts, and chances. They will continue calling it a competition. You will continue calling Lucy Gray Baird by her name. And somewhere beyond the academy walls, the 10th Hunger Games will begin to acquire an audience. Rain has darkened the fabric of the reaping platform, and the wooden boards shine beneath the grey sky of District 12. You are standing among miners' families beneath a row of black umbrellas, while coal dust gathers in the seams of every coat. The air carries wet earth, chimney smoke, and the faint mineral scent rising from the ground around the district. Behind you, narrow houses lean together along muddy streets, their windows dim though the morning has already begun. Ahead, the mayor and his officials wait beneath a canvas awning, protected from the rain settling upon everyone else. A loudspeaker crackles above the square, and the metallic voice of the capital enters the cold air without warmth. You hear the familiar language of duty, sacrifice, and honor spoken over people who possess very little besides one another. District 12 is known for coal mining, and that knowledge lies heavily upon the square like another layer of weather. Severe poverty has shaped the faces around you, leaving cheeks hollow, hands rough, and clothing repaired many times. The families have come to lose one child, though none speaks the thought aloud. Coriolanus Snow stands among the capital students, his pale uniform too clean for the mud and rain. He is observing the ceremony as an assignment, yet the morning already feels less orderly than the academy has promised. The mayor's daughter, Mayfair Lip, stands near the front in a dress finer than anything worn by the miners' children. Her ribbons are bright against the wet square, and her guarded expression shows that privilege cannot make the reaping harmless. The officials draw names from glass bowls, and every movement is watched by the silent cameras of the capital. The female tribute from District 12 will be chosen first. A hand enters the bowl, stirs the folded slips, and lifts one small piece of paper into the light. The mayor's voice falters before he speaks the name. Lucy Gray Baird. For one breath, nothing moves except the rain. Then Lucy Gray steps forward. She is wearing a dress whose colors seem impossible beneath the darkened sky, its fabric flashing blue, yellow, and red whenever she turns. The sharp color travels through the square, and every face follows it. You see her walk from the crowd with an ease that does not belong to someone being led towards death. She does not lower her head or fold her hands. Lucy Gray Baird looks towards the officials, the cameras, and the people of District 12 who already know her. She is a member of the Covey, a traveling musical group that has moved through the districts with instruments, songs, and changing fortunes. Her life has been made partly from roads, partly from performances, and partly from the fragile shelter of a group bound together by music. Coriolanus has heard nothing about the Covey in his academy lessons. He has been taught to imagine district people as hungry, resentful, and obedient to whatever shape the capital gives them. Lucy Gray refuses that shape before the entire square. She opens her mouth and begins to sing. The sound is not loud at first, but it crosses the wet platform with a clear, soft resonance. Her melody settles over the crowd, and the rain seems to become part of its rhythm. The mayor lowers the paper, and the officials glance at one another. Someone behind you whispers her name, and the whisper moves through the square like a current beneath dark water. Lucy Gray is not submitting quietly. She's transforming the reaping into a performance. The state ceremony remains around her, with its bowls, uniforms, cameras, and official language. Yet the music gives the moment another center. Her voice creates a place where she remains herself, even while the capital claims her body. The Covey's songs have carried her through taverns, village gatherings, and uncertain roads. Now one of them rises above District 12, beneath a sky the color of iron. The words are simple, but their meaning is not. They speak of longing, danger, and the knowledge that beauty may appear briefly before disappearing again. Lucy Gray's dress is rain-darkened at the hem, and drops slide from its bright folds while she sings. The wet cloth clings to the platform, but the colors remain vivid. You hear the crowd breathing between the lines, unwilling to interrupt her. The loudspeaker hangs above the square, silent now, because no mechanical voice can improve upon what has begun. Coriolanus watches the capital observers watching Lucy Gray. Their faces have changed. They are no longer recording an ordinary reaping from an unimportant district. They are searching for a story. They are measuring the effect of her dress, posture, voice, and strange confidence before the cameras. Lucy Gray has become immediately memorable to the capital. The fact troubles Coriolanus, because memorability may be more useful than strength. He understands that the games will not be won by weapons alone. The audience must first be made to care about the person holding one. Lucy Gray already possesses a kind of attention that cannot be assigned by officials. Her charisma may give her an advantage. Coriolanus recognizes this before deciding whether he admires it. When the song ends, the silence feels larger than the applause that follows. District 12 does not applaud as the capital would. There is only a scattered, restrained sound rising from people who understand the danger of being noticed. Lucy Gray turns towards Mayfair Lip. The mayor's daughter has been watching beneath the awning, her face tightened with anger. A small snake lies among the folds of Lucy Gray's dress. Perhaps it has been hidden there deliberately. Perhaps the confusion has allowed it to pass unseen. Lucy Gray reaches down with one quick movement and takes it. The animal coils across her hand, its body dark and shining in the rain. You see Mayfair step back. Lucy Gray approaches her and slips the snake down the mayor's daughter's dress. Mayfair shrieks, and the square breaks apart into movement. Her mother grabs at the fabric. The mayor shouts for the guards. The cameras turn towards the disturbance with hungry precision. Lucy Gray retreats only a step, her expression unreadable beneath the rain. The act is shocking, intimate, and impossible to forget. It changes the reaping from a ceremony into an event. Coriolanus understands that the capital will repeat the image before the day is over. They will speak of the girl in the colored dress, the snake, the song, and the mayor's daughter. They will speak of Lucy Gray Baird. Her name will travel farther than District 12 ever has. A coal district has produced a performer, and the capital has found itself looking directly at her. You remain in the square while officials surround Mayfair and guards move towards Lucy Gray. The rain continues through the commotion, tapping against umbrellas and darkening the shoulders of the crowd. A length of ribbon has come loose from Lucy Gray's dress, trailing across the platform like a bright thread. Mud gathers beneath the officials' boots. The smell of wet wool mixes with coal smoke and the sharper odor of frightened animals from a nearby alley. Lucy Gray's colors seem almost luminous against the brown ground. Her voice remains in the air after the song, not as sound now, but as a memory carried between people. The mayor's daughter is still crying beneath the awning. Her dress has been shaken and searched, while Mayfair's father demands punishment. Lucy Gray stands among the guards with her hands lowered and her chin raised. There is no triumph in her face. There is only the knowledge that the moment cannot be taken back. Coriolanus sees that she has entered the games before the arena exists. She has already found an audience and given it an image. He also sees the danger beneath the spectacle. A person who can command attention may be protected by it, but someone who humiliates the powerful may be destroyed for the same reason. The capital calls attention a gift when it serves the capital. District 12 calls it survival when survival has become public. Coriolanus is assigned to Lucy Gray as her mentor. The pairing is announced among the other names, but it feels different from the rest. He has been given a girl with a voice, a dress, and a story that the capital cannot easily ignore. He tells himself that this is fortunate. A tribute with no identity would be difficult to sell. A tribute who can sing may become memorable, and a memorable tribute may receive food, gifts, and protection. Each thought sounds practical inside Coriolanus's mind. He does not yet call it concern. The capital has placed the tributes in a zoo before the games, arranging living children behind iron bars for public inspection. They are displayed as curiosities, separated from ordinary citizens by enclosures and signs. The arrangement allows visitors to walk among them while pretending that observation is not cruelty. Coriolanus enters the zoo beneath a pale afternoon sky. Rain has stopped, but water remains gathered in the cracks between the paving stones. Animal smells rise from the enclosures, mingling with damp straw, old hay, and the sour scent of waste. The iron bars are cold beneath his gloved hand. Beyond them, tributes sit, stand, or pace within spaces designed for creatures that cannot speak to their keeper. Some children stare back at the visitors. Others avoid the crowd's eyes. A few press their faces close to the bars, hoping proximity may produce food. Coriolanus moves through the zoo with the other mentors. Their uniforms mark them as capital students, and the contrast between polished clothes and crude enclosures is difficult to conceal. The visitors point, whisper, and laugh. They discuss districts as though each child were an unfamiliar species. The tribute from District 12 is somewhere beyond the central path. Coriolanus hears her before he sees her. Her voice travels through stone and iron, soft enough to seem private, yet clear enough to draw him onward. Lucy Gray is sitting inside a stone enclosure, her back against the wall and one knee raised beneath her colored dress. The dress is stained from the journey, and its bright fabric has lost some of its original sharpness. Even so, the colors remain visible in the dimness. A few strands of hair cling to her cheek. She is singing to herself. The melody rests against the stone, returning in a muted echo that makes the enclosure feel briefly larger. Coriolanus stops outside the bars. The song is familiar to the people of District 12, but not to him. It carries the texture of traveling roads and rooms where strangers have paid for a performance. Lucy Gray opens her eyes and sees him. She does not stop singing immediately. Her gaze rests upon his pale face, academy uniform, and capital polish, all separating him from the dust beneath her shoes. The song continues for another line before she lets it fade. Coriolanus introduces himself as her mentor. Lucy Gray studies him, with an expression containing neither gratitude nor fear. She asks whether he has brought anything to eat. The question is practical, and it catches him unprepared. He has seen capital food placed beside the bars, abundant enough to feed several families. The tributes have been offered dishes they do not recognize, portions too rich for stomachs accustomed to hunger. Some plates remain untouched. Uneaten capital food lies beside the iron bars, its sauces cooling in silver containers. Lucy Gray looks at one such plate with suspicion. Coriolanus understands that food cannot help if the recipient is afraid to eat. He begins bringing Lucy Gray practical things. He brings bread wrapped in paper, fruit she can identify, and water without the sweet flavorings that accompany most capital drinks. He carries the offerings through the zoo while telling himself that strategy requires a healthy tribute. A starving girl cannot sing well. A frightened girl cannot persuade an audience. A weak girl cannot survive long enough to become valuable. The reasoning is tidy, and Coriolanus prefers it that way. Lucy Gray accepts the food, though she does not pretend that acceptance means trusting him. She tears the bread into pieces and eats slowly. The movement reminds him of a bird testing a new surface. He wonders whether she has always been cautious, or whether the capital has taught caution to everyone from District 12. Her confidence unsettles his assumptions about district people. He expected suspicion without charm, anger without discipline, and fear concealed beneath silence. Lucy Gray possesses suspicion, but it sits beside wit. She possesses fear, but she does not permit fear to decide every movement. Her confidence does not mean that she feels safe. It means that she has learned to remain visible without surrendering entirely. Coriolanus does not know what to do with such a person. You are standing outside the enclosure while evening settles over the zoo. The stones have begun to cool, and moisture shines along the low walls. A thin wind enters through the ironwork, carrying the musk of animals from darker buildings. Damp straw lies in flattened heaps near the corners, mixed with feathers, leaves, and traces of old grain. Somewhere nearby, a large animal shifts against its enclosure, producing a slow scrape of claws against wood. The sound is followed by a low breath that disappears into the evening. Lucy Gray's melody returns softly from the stone chamber. It does not fill the zoo, yet it reaches the path where Coriolanus stands. The notes seem to gather the scattered sounds around them. Water drips from a roof edge. A visitor murmurs behind a gloved hand. Metal touches metal as one of the gates is closed. Within the enclosure, the song remains delicate, almost weightless. A dish of capital food sits beside the bars, untouched except for a darkened crust at its edge. Steam has vanished from the meat. Bright fruit rests in a shallow bowl, too perfect to resemble anything grown in District 12. Lucy Gray has chosen the bread Coriolanus brought. She holds it in both hands, protecting it from the dust. Orange lamplight touches the dress and makes the faded colors glow for a moment. Coriolanus returns to the zoo again. He tells himself that he is checking the condition of his tribute. He tells himself that the other mentors are careless, and that Lucy Gray requires someone attentive enough to understand her strength. He tells himself that her songs are resources which must be preserved. Yet each explanation becomes less convincing as the visits continue. He begins to listen for her voice before reaching the enclosure. He notices which food she eats and which she leaves. He remembers that she dislikes sweetened water. He observes the way she folds her dress before sleeping on the straw. These details are not part of any formal strategy. They are the small pieces of knowledge that gather around a person when attention has become personal. Lucy Gray asks about the capital. Coriolanus answers cautiously. He describes its streets, schools, buildings, and theatres. He does not describe the hunger beneath its abundance. He does not describe his own family's uncertain position or the loss of wealth that has made his polished appearance increasingly fragile. He speaks as though the capital has always possessed everything. Lucy Gray listens, then sings a line about a place where people wear bright clothes while others go cold. Coriolanus asks whether the song is about the capital. She smiles without answering. Her songs create a bond that he does not know how to name. Music allows her to reveal herself while keeping a portion of herself hidden. The state ceremony presented Lucy Gray as a female tribute from District 12. The music presents her as a member of the covey. The ceremony gives the capital a category. The song gives that category a human voice. Coriolanus feels the difference each time she sings. He wants the audience to hear her and admire her performance. He wants it to increase her chances. At the same time, he wants the song to belong to the private space between them. The contradiction troubles him, although he does not yet admit its shape. Care and possession begin to overlap in the quietest ways. He brings food because she needs it. He brings attention because attention may save her. He listens because her music interests him. He listens because he wants to be the person she sings towards. You can feel the unevenness between them in the narrow space beyond the bars. Coriolanus stands outside the enclosure, clean, dry, and free to leave. Lucy Gray sits within it, wearing rain-marked fabric and carrying the knowledge of the arena ahead. His hands are gloved against the cold. Her fingers remain bare. A capital student watches her as an unusual and valuable figure. A condemned girl watches him as someone who may provide bread. Their words move between them, but the iron remains. The bars are thick enough to cast shadows across the stone. Lamplight falls through those shadows in narrow stripes. A beetle moves along the edge of a dish and disappears beneath a scrap of straw. The smell of wet animal fur drifts from the adjoining enclosure. Lucy Gray's dress has dried unevenly, leaving stiff folds around her knees. One bright strip of color rests against the gray wall. The contrast is almost painful in its clarity. On the path, a capital child points towards Lucy Gray and asks whether she is dangerous. An adult answers that all tributes are dangerous. Coriolanus hears the answer and looks towards the girl singing quietly to herself. The question has already reduced her to a spectacle. He dislikes the reduction because it interferes with his plans. He wants her to be seen as exceptional, but the exceptional person must still remain useful to him. Even admiration carries an appetite. The other tributes receive similar treatment from the public. Visitors compare their bodies, accents, clothes, and expressions. Some throw scraps through the bars. Some laugh when a tribute refuses them. The zoo turns suffering into an afternoon outing. Coriolanus moves through the enclosures with a growing unease that he converts into concentration. He studies the tributes as the capital studies them. He notices who attracts pity and who attracts fear. He counts the people who stop near Lucy Gray. Her dress draws attention before her voice does. Then she sings, and the attention remains. The capital has little patience for silence. A silent tribute may be forgotten. Lucy Gray cannot easily be forgotten. Coriolanus begins preparing her for the games. He asks what she can do besides sing. She answers that she can perform, move, read a crowd, and survive difficult rooms. She speaks of roads, sudden weather, suspicious strangers, and audiences that change their minds without warning. She has learned to understand people quickly because a traveling group cannot afford to misunderstand them for long. The covey has taught her how to hold a room. District 12 has taught her how to leave one. The games, Coriolanus says, will demand both abilities. He speaks about observation and timing. He explains that strength matters, but so does the impression made before the killing begins. Lucy Gray already understands this. The reaping song proves it. She asks what the capital wants from her. Coriolanus says that the capital wants a story. He does not say that the capital also wants submission. He does not say that a story becomes property once enough people believe they own it. Lucy Gray looks towards the uneaten food beside the bars. She asks whether the capital always calls its possessions beautiful. Coriolanus does not answer directly. His silence gives her an answer anyway. The zoo grows quieter as the visitors leave. Their footsteps recede across the wet paving stones. Gates are locked one by one, and the iron sounds travel along the animal houses. The remaining lamps burn with a muted yellow glow. Damp straw releases a warm, earthy smell as the night air cools it. Beyond the walls, the capital continues its evening life. Carriages pass. Windows shine. Music rises faintly from buildings where no one is behind bars. Inside the enclosure, Lucy Gray rests her head against the stone. Her voice is lower now, nearly a murmur. The melody touches the wall and returns with a softened edge. Coriolanus stands outside, listening until the final note disappears. A dish of capital food remains untouched beside him. The sauce has formed a skin. A slice of fruit has browned where the air reached it. The bread he brought is gone. He notices this and feels satisfaction. Then he feels something less simple. The food was meant to keep her alive. It was also proof that he could provide what she lacked. The distinction begins to fade. Coriolanus returns to the academy with Lucy Gray's name moving through his thoughts. His classmates discuss tributes as though they are entries in a ledger. They estimate chances, assign qualities, and imagine the spectacle of the arena. Coriolanus contributes because he must appear composed. He describes Lucy Gray's appeal and mentions the dress, snake, and song. He explains that charisma may give her an advantage. The word sounds academic among students. It becomes less comfortable when he remembers her hands around a piece of bread. His ambition depends upon her survival. Her survival depends partly upon his ambition. The arrangement allows both of them to benefit, but it does not make them equal. He is a capital student. She is a district girl condemned to die. He can walk away from the enclosure. She cannot walk away from the games. The unequal nature of their relationship remains present even when their conversation is warm. Lucy Gray may joke with him. She may sing towards him. She may accept the food he brings. None of these gestures alters the bars. Coriolanus knows that the capital has given him authority over her public image. He can influence the way sponsors see her. He can decide which details to reveal. He can present her as charming, dangerous, vulnerable, or brave. The freedom to shape her story is another form of power. He begins to understand that care can become possessive without announcing itself. A mentor may protect a tribute while also claiming the right to direct her. A provider may offer food while expecting loyalty. An admirer may praise a song while wanting the singer to remain available. Coriolanus does not resolve these contradictions. He carries them through the corridors beneath the metallic loudspeakers. The next morning brings a thin brightness over the zoo. Rainwater remains in the hollows between stones, reflecting the bars in broken lines. You are near the enclosure again, where the air is cold and smells of straw, iron, and waking animals. A keeper moves along the path with a bucket. The bucket knocks against the gate, producing a dull rhythm. Some tributes sleep. Others have been awake for hours. Lucy Gray stands beside the wall, humming without words. Her colored dress hangs loosely now, and the fabric has dried to a rough texture. The sharp flash of color remains visible whenever she shifts her weight. Coriolanus brings fresh bread and a small jar of preserved fruit. He places them through the opening between the bars. Lucy Gray takes the bread first. She asks whether the capital has decided what to do with her. Coriolanus tells her that the capital has decided nothing, because the games depend upon uncertainty. She says that the capital has already decided she belongs to it. The remark is quiet. He tells her that belonging may be useful. Lucy Gray laughs softly. She says that usefulness is another word for being kept. Coriolanus dislikes the accuracy of this. He reminds her that he is trying to help. Lucy Gray says she knows. Then she asks who benefits when he succeeds. The question remains between them, more difficult than any question about weapons or sponsors. Coriolanus says that both of them benefit. She looks at him for a long moment. Her expression is not hostile. It is simply unwilling to pretend that equality has entered the enclosure. She begins to sing again. This time the melody is slower, and its soft resonance moves through the stone around them. Coriolanus does not interrupt. The song contains the road, the district, the covey, and the uncertain future beyond the zoo. It also contains the girl from the reaping platform, standing in rain-darkened fabric before the cameras. Lucy Gray Baird remains the female tribute from District 12. She remains a singer and performer. She remains a child chosen by a government that calls death a game. Yet names and categories cannot contain the sound of her voice. The capital may display her as a curiosity. Coriolanus may present her as a strategy. The audience may decide that it loves her. None of them can fully own the song once it has entered the air. Outside the enclosure, the morning brightens without becoming warm. A grey wash spreads across the zoo walls. Condensation gathers on the iron bars, and each droplet holds a distorted reflection. The path smells of wet stone and animal bedding. Damp straw clings to the edges of the enclosures. A raven calls somewhere beyond the roof line, answered by a distant clatter of wings. The capital food beside the bars has been removed, but a faint sweetness remains in the dish. The keeper has left a bowl of water near Lucy Gray. Its surface trembles whenever the gate closes nearby. The stone enclosure gives back the melody in softened repetition. Each note seems to travel farther than the walls should allow. Coriolanus's shadow lies across the entrance. Lucy Gray's shadow rests behind the bars. Between them, the light forms a narrow strip upon the floor. A green thread is sewn into one sleeve of her dress. He notices it when she lifts her arm while singing. The small thread is the only part of the fabric that remains completely dry. He remembers it later, though he cannot explain why. The games are approaching, and every hour adds another layer to the story prepared for the capital. Lucy Gray's story began with a name drawn from a bowl. It continued with a song. It sharpened through a snake placed down Mayfair Lip's dress. It gathered around bread, iron bars, animal smells, and the patience of a girl who refuses to become silent. Coriolanus continues bringing Lucy Gray food and attention before the games. He continues calling the visit strategy. Sometimes he believes the explanation. Sometimes he hears the lie beneath it. Lucy Gray knows that he wants her to survive. She also knows that he wants her survival to reflect well upon him. He is a capital student whose future depends upon the result. She is condemned to die unless she can persuade the capital to delay its appetite. Their relationship remains unequal, even when music makes the distance feel briefly smaller. The enclosure cannot become a home. The food cannot become freedom. The attention cannot become rescue. Still, something passes between them when Lucy Gray sings. It is not innocence. It is not equality. It is the beginning of a bond formed under pressure, where kindness and calculation share the same narrow space. Coriolanus listens, and the sound settles over the zoo. The melody moves through stone, over damp straw, and between cold iron bars. It reaches the path where visitors once stood, though the path is empty now. The song remains after the footsteps have gone. District 12 waits beyond the capital's view, with its coal mines, poor houses, and rain-darkened streets. The covey's travelling music waits inside Lucy Gray's memory. The reaping platform waits inside the memory of everyone who witnessed it. Mayfair Lip's frightened cry remains attached to the bright dress. The capital will remember Lucy Gray because she performed when silence was expected. Coriolanus will remember her because her performance has become useful. He will remember her because the songs have begun to sound personal. He will remember her because care has started to resemble possession. The 10th Hunger Games will soon place her inside an arena. For now, she remains behind iron bars in the capital zoo. A little bread lies in her hands. The stone holds the last vibration of her melody. Morning light touches the colors of her dress and finds them still alive. Beneath the careful language of strategy, Coriolanus begins to understand that Lucy Gray Baird cannot be reduced to a tribute. Sunlight falls through broken concrete above you, laying pale rectangles across the arena floor where weeds grow through old mortar. You stand among the 10th tributes in a building damaged during the war, surrounded by walls that still remember artillery and fire. The capital has not yet transformed this place into a purpose-built wilderness, complete with engineered streams, hidden cameras, and carefully arranged opportunities for violence. Instead, the structure remains an injured civic building, its galleries split open, its entrances choked with fallen stone, and its inner chambers dark beneath the surviving roofs. Dust rests upon every surface, while the smell of smoke and old masonry rises whenever a boot disturbs the ground. Beyond the shattered wall, a dry wind moves across cracked seats, carrying grit through rows intended for citizens who have not yet decided whether they care. The 10th Hunger Games are held in the ruined Capitol Arena because the institution has scarcely learned what it wishes to become. Tributes enter through tunnels and broken sections of the building, guided by guards who seem uncertain where the old corridors end and the battlefield begins. Some arrive beneath the arena through passages where pipes hang from ceilings, while others climb over collapsed masonry into the open light. The movement lacks ceremony, and no polished announcement turns their fear into a national occasion. Several tributes die before the formal contest begins, struck down in the confusion surrounding their arrival or weakened by conditions that no later game maker would have permitted. Their deaths are terrible, yet they do not unfold as a designed sequence. The early bloodshed is chaotic rather than choreographed. Your footsteps echo through empty tunnels beneath the arena, returning from passages filled with broken tiles and narrow strips of afternoon brightness. The air is cooler below ground, though each breath carries the dusty bitterness of plaster recently shaken from the ceilings. Somewhere beyond the walls, loose metal taps softly against a beam, interrupted whenever the wind changes direction. You pass old stains beneath the arches, darkened by soot and rain, while small stones shift under your soles with a faint, granular sound. Above you, sunlight filters through cracks in the concrete and settles upon the stairways like thin winter water. Cold air moves across your face as guards lead the tributes onward, and the smell of smoke lingers in the folds of clothing, mixed with sweat, damp earth, and the mineral scent of old masonry. Coriolanus watches Lucy Gray enter through a broken section of the building, her dress carrying color into a place made almost entirely from dust. He has already begun to think of her as exceptional, although the arena offers no stage on which such qualities can be displayed safely. The other tributes are frightened, hungry, angry, or too young to understand the scale of the machinery around them. Mentors try to make their tributes appear sympathetic or distinctive, using gestures, clothing, names, and improvised stories to persuade the capital that these imprisoned children deserve attention. Their efforts resemble bargaining in a market where no one has yet agreed that the goods possess value. Lucy Gray, however, does not plead in a simple manner, and her composure gives Coriolanus another problem, because sympathy begins to mingle with fascination. A dry wind crosses the cracked seats above you, stirring scraps of paper that have survived beneath layers of ash. The paper skitters from one row to another, pauses against a broken step, then rises briefly before settling again. Empty galleries surround the arena, their stone faces opened by explosions and weather, with jagged beams showing where ceilings once protected the crowd. Sunlight reaches the floor through several wounds in the concrete, making bright islands beside shadows that seem almost blue. Smoke has entered the masonry so deeply that it remains present even where no fire burns. When the wind passes over the upper tiers, it produces a low, rushing murmur, rather like distant water beneath a bridge. The arena listens without interest, and the ruined seats give no answer. The opening bloodshed begins before the contest has properly acquired a beginning, because the 10th games possess no stable boundary between preparation and performance. A tribute may collapse in a tunnel, be attacked beside a broken arch, or die while guards attempt to move the group into position. In later games, such moments will be separated from the spectacle by rules, timing, and an arranged, visual language. Here, violence leaks across every boundary, as though the capital has carried the civil war directly into the arena and merely changed the names of those involved. Coriolanus observes the disorder with growing alarm, understanding that the games cannot depend upon death alone. If violence appears ordinary, the audience may find no reason to remain seated, and an uninterested audience threatens the ritual's entire political purpose. Your shoulder brushes a wall whose surface has been stripped to rough aggregate, exposing pale stones inside the concrete. Fine dust descends whenever a distant door closes, forming a soft veil that catches the sunlight above the passage. The tunnel smells of dampness beneath stronger odors of smoke, rust, and old masonry. Footsteps echo in uneven rhythms, some quick with fear and others slow beneath exhaustion. A guard's keys move against his belt, producing a small metallic chime that travels farther than his voice. Through a fractured opening, you glimpse the arena floor, where a fallen column lies among weeds and fragments of painted plaster. The dry wind cannot reach you there, yet you feel its pressure through the broken building, entering wherever war has removed a wall. The bombing occurs in the arena before the contest is complete, breaking the boundary between spectacle and ordinary political violence. A sudden force lifts dust from the floor and sends fragments of concrete through the air, while the sound rolls beneath the surviving roof and into the tunnels. People are killed or injured, and the confusion becomes greater than anything the game makers have arranged. Guards shout contradictory orders, tributes scatter towards cover, and mentors search the galleries for signs of the children entrusted to them. The attack makes the capital's ritual look vulnerable, because the same violence that once threatened the city has entered the place designed to contain violence for public instruction. The 10th games continue, but their continuation now seems less like a performance than an administrative decision made among smoke and wounded bodies. Dust shaken loose by the explosion settles slowly upon your hair, hands, and clothes. For several moments, the arena becomes almost quiet, apart from falling grit and the faint groans of damaged structures. The smell of smoke grows sharper, carrying burned timber, scorched dust, and the bitter trace of explosives through the open spaces. Sunlight falling through broken concrete turns the suspended particles silver, then grey, then nearly invisible as they descend. Somewhere above, a broken seat gives way with a dull crack, and a small cascade of pebbles runs down the steps. The air tastes dry against your tongue, while old masonry releases a chalky scent beneath the heat. Across the empty galleries, wind moves through cracked seats and lifts ash into narrow spirals that vanish beside the ruined walls. Coriolanus watches Lucy Gray survive through nerve, improvisation, and observation, rather than through any perfect plan prepared by the capital. She notices where the guards are looking, which passages remain open, and how frightened people behave when their instructions stop making sense. Her intelligence is practical, immediate, and difficult to control, allowing her to move through confusion without becoming absorbed by it. Coriolanus sees that she does not merely endure danger, because she studies danger and uses its movements to create small spaces for herself. The arena cannot yet provide a carefully designed landscape, so she makes one from rubble, shadows, noise, and the attention of others. Lucy Gray remains alive because she treats the ruined arena as information, while her enemies treat it as a command. A narrow beam of sunlight lies across the floor near your feet, warming one patch of dust, while the surrounding concrete remains cold. The distinction is delicate, though your skin notices it when you step from brightness into shadow. Powdered mortar gathers in the seams between paving stones, and every movement raises a faint cloud that drifts towards the nearest opening. From the upper levels comes the soft scrape of loose debris moving beneath the dry wind. The cracked seats hold pockets of darkness where leaves and fragments of cloth have collected during the years after the war. Smoke clings to the deeper corners, not as a visible cloud, but as a stale flavor in the air. You hear a distant cough, followed by footsteps fading beneath the broken arena. The Capitol audience is not yet guaranteed to watch, and this uncertainty troubles those attempting to establish the Games as a lasting institution. The broadcast reaches homes, but its existence does not ensure attention, especially when citizens have other distractions and no tradition of collective viewing. The Games remain a punitive state ritual rather than a national holiday, a public punishment imposed upon defeated districts and displayed to an audience that may regard it as tiresome. The Capitol wants fear to travel through the screen, yet fear requires an audience willing to keep looking. When the bombing interrupts the event, the problem becomes unmistakable, since viewers may interpret the disorder as evidence of incompetence rather than authority. The Capitol must solve the question of attention before it can refine the question of spectacle. The afternoon light shifts across the ruined arena, leaving bright edges along stones darkened by smoke. You sit or stand among damaged rows while the dry wind moves across cracked seats and carries fragments of conversation from below. The air has lost some of its sharpness, though the smell of old masonry remains beneath the warmer odor of dust. A broken stair gives way to a shallow slope, and small grains of concrete slide downward whenever someone passes. The silence between voices feels spacious, almost peaceful, until a distant impact recalls the war that damaged the building. Sunlight enters through gaps where ceilings have fallen, illuminating weeds, torn fabric, and the pale bones of old walls. Footsteps echo through empty tunnels, making the arena seem larger than its remaining structure. Coriolanus secretly provides Lucy Gray with food because hunger has become one of the forces shaping her chances of survival. He finds a way to place nourishment where she can reach it, concealing the exchange from those who might question his motives or punish his interference. The gesture is practical, yet it carries an intimacy he refuses to name, and secrecy makes the provision feel like a private bond. Lucy Gray receives what she can use, but she remains responsible for deciding when and how to consume it. Coriolanus wants her alive, although his concern is already tangled with the desire to preserve the person who has captured his imagination. In the 10th Games, a small amount of food can resemble mercy, strategy, possession, or all three at once, depending upon who watches from the shadows. Your fingers touch the rough edge of a broken ledge, where the concrete has split around a rusted length of reinforcement. The metal feels cool despite the warmth above, and reddish powder marks your skin when you draw your hand away. Smoke and old masonry scent the air around the opening, while sunlight falls through broken concrete in narrow vertical bands. A dry wind moves over the exposed upper seats, but only a faint current reaches this sheltered corner. Loose plaster hangs overhead, patterned with dark lines where rain has entered since the war. Beyond the wall, you hear murmured voices, a boot striking stone, and the irregular shifting of frightened bodies. The arena's textures remain plain and honest, offering no illusion that this place was constructed for anything except survival and repair. The bombing adds confusion to an event already damaged by poor planning, and the wounded alter the movement of every person inside the arena. Some tributes are separated from their groups, while others discover that the guards no longer possess a clear path through the ruins. Mentors call names from the galleries, attempting to guide children who cannot see the people speaking. Coriolanus must watch from a position that limits his actions, measuring each moment against the possibility of exposure. Lucy Gray moves carefully, conserving strength and avoiding places where panic draws the greatest concentration of bodies. Her survival depends upon small choices that would be invisible in a polished arena, yet the crude setting makes every decision legible to anyone paying attention. The games become a study in observation before they become a study in combat. A thin haze hangs beneath the surviving roof, colored faintly by the afternoon sun. Dust shaken loose by explosions drifts from ledges and collects upon the shoulders of guards, mentors, and tributes alike. The smell of smoke has softened into something older, like charred wood left inside a sealed room. Around you, the floor is uneven, marked by pits, cracks, and shallow ridges formed when the building was struck. Wind crosses the highest seats and produces a dry whisper through gaps in the stone. The sound does not resemble applause, and nothing in the arena suggests celebration. Footsteps echo through empty tunnels until they lose their direction, leaving you unable to tell whether someone approaches or disappears. The remaining light rests upon the rubble with quiet indifference. Dr. Gall treats violence and experimentation as tools of political education, and the 10th games offer her a rough laboratory in which both ideas can be tested. She sees the tributes as subjects, the audience as a population requiring instruction, and the arena as a device for demonstrating the consequences of disorder. Pain, fear, and death become lessons that must be shaped if they are to serve the capital's authority. The bombing complicates her work, because uncontrolled violence may teach a different lesson from the one she intends. It may reveal weakness, invite sympathy, or remind viewers that the city itself remains vulnerable. Dr. Gall therefore searches for methods that will make the games appear meaningful, even when the ruined arena exposes how recently the Civil War ended and how little separates punishment from chaos. Cold air moves across your face through a gap where an outer wall has collapsed, bringing the faint odor of wet soil from beyond the building. Inside, the masonry remains dry and powdery, with rough surfaces that crumble beneath careless contact. A dark line of smoke stains the ceiling above you, curving around a fracture filled with pale daylight. The arena floor absorbs each footfall, but the tunnels return those sounds with hollow persistence. Cracked seats rise in broken tiers, their surfaces warmed on one side and shadowed on the other. Wind carries a few dry leaves into the nearest aisle, where they rotate slowly before coming to rest against a stone. No ornament softens the place, and no arrangement persuades you that destruction has been converted into design. The crude setting helps reveal how much later game makers will add to the institution, because almost every feature that will define the games is still absent. There are no engineered forests, shifting landscapes, hidden traps disguised as natural beauty, or elaborate ceremonies capable of making cruelty festive. The capital has not yet learned to place death within a pleasing composition, and the arena remains visibly connected to ordinary buildings and recent political violence. The tributes do not emerge from polished entrances beneath a sky designed for television. They come through tunnels and broken sections, passing walls that still carry the marks of war. The 10th games are primitive in production and revealing in their simplicity, showing the institution before artifice conceals its foundations. The evening light turns the concrete a muted gold, while deeper recesses gather blue shadow. You smell dust, smoke, and old masonry whenever the wind changes direction, with a faint metallic note rising from exposed beams. The cracked seats cool beneath the passing air, and grit moves across their surfaces in narrow, shifting lines. A loose sheet of metal trembles somewhere near the roof, making a delicate vibration that continues after the wind has gone. From below, footsteps echo through empty tunnels, then merge with the subdued sounds of guards reorganizing their positions. The surviving tributes remain scattered among stone, shadow, and debris, their faces altered by fatigue and fear. Above them, sunlight disappears from the broken openings one pale strip at a time. Coriolanus watches Lucy Gray draw attention without surrendering control of herself, and he recognizes that distinction may matter more than strength. She can appear vulnerable when vulnerability serves her, then become watchful when pity begins to attract danger. Her voice, clothing, and manner give the capital something memorable to discuss, while her instincts keep her alive among people who possess weapons. Mentors attempt similar transformations with their tributes, searching for a gesture or detail that might make one frightened child seem sympathetic or distinctive. Yet Lucy Gray's presence feels less manufactured because she has learned to use performance as a form of protection. Coriolanus sees the advantage and begins to believe that he alone understands its value, allowing admiration to deepen into a private claim upon her future. Night gathers beyond the broken walls, although the arena retains a little warmth from the day. Dust lies upon the floor in soft fans beside each opening, disturbed by movement, and then left undisturbed again. Smoke has become a thin residue in the air, joined by the sense of dry stone, old timber, and cool earth. The wind moves over cracked seats and slips down the aisles, touching your hands with a faint chill. A distant lamp glows in one tunnel, its light too weak to reach the next bend. Shadows occupy the spaces where sunlight had rested, and the broken concrete appears darker than the sky beyond it. Each sound travels unevenly, so that a cough may seem near, while a shouted order fades into the building's hollow depths. The audience's uncertainty about whether to watch becomes a problem the capital must solve, because punishment loses political force when citizens turn away. Officials cannot simply command attention through the existence of a broadcast, especially while the event resembles a disorganized aftermath of war. The 10th Hunger Games need structure, personalities, and emotional contrasts capable of holding viewers through periods without action. Mentors provide some of that structure by presenting their tributes as individuals rather than anonymous enemies. Coriolanus contributes through his secret support for Lucy Gray, while Dr. Gall seeks a larger explanation that will make violence appear educational. Between them, the capital begins to discover that spectacle requires preparation, interpretation, and careful management of sympathy. Your breathing settles into the quiet rhythm of the ruined building, where the remaining warmth fades from each exposed surface. The smell of smoke and old masonry rests close to the ground, softened by cooler air entering through the broken sections. Dust gathers in the seams of the arena floor, while tiny fragments of plaster glimmer briefly whenever a lamp passes nearby. Above you, the last sunlight withdraws from the concrete and leaves the openings filled with deepening gray. The dry wind continues across cracked seats, carrying no applause or celebration from the empty galleries. Footsteps echo through empty tunnels behind you, become indistinct, and finally dissolve into the layered hush of stone. The arena seems less like a theater than a wounded place waiting for the city to decide what it means. The 10th Games remain a punitive state ritual, and their power still depends upon the memory of rebellion more than upon any shared pleasure in watching. The ruined Capitol Arena exposes the recentness of the Civil War at every turn, with broken walls and scorched surfaces refusing to become historical decoration. Tributes are placed inside a damaged building because the state has not yet invested in making their deaths appear distant from ordinary violence. Several have already died before the formal contest begins, and others carry injuries caused by the bombing rather than by any designed challenge. Their suffering is not yet framed by the smooth language of later broadcasts, which will turn terror into episodes and arenas into landscapes. In this early form, the institution reveals its bare purpose. Punishment made visible, authority rehearsed through the bodies of the defeated. Moonlight reaches through broken concrete and settles upon the arena floor in irregular shapes. Under that colder illumination, the masonry appears pale, while dust becomes a fine grey covering over every ledge and stair. A faint wind passes through the damaged roof, stirring ash beside the walls and lifting a few threads from torn clothing. The air smells of smoke that has entered stone, old mortar, and earth cooling after a warm day. Somewhere beyond the main chamber, a guard closes a door, and the sound travels through the tunnels with surprising clarity. The cracked seats hold their shadows as night deepens, while narrow gaps reveal stars above the Capitol. Nothing in the scene suggests a holiday, and no empty row expects a crowd. Coriolanus continues to watch Lucy Gray because she gives shape to an event that otherwise threatens to vanish into confusion. She survives by reading the room, changing her posture, and understanding that attention can protect her when carefully directed. The food he secretly provides becomes part of that fragile arrangement, hidden from officials yet present in the decisions she makes. He tells himself that his actions serve strategy, although the thought of her hunger troubles him beyond any calculation of victory. Lucy Gray remains surrounded by danger, but she is no longer invisible, and visibility brings both opportunity and risk. In the damaged Capitol arena, Coriolanus begins to imagine that he can guide the games through her, while the games teach him how easily care becomes control. The cold air carries the faintest trace of morning from beyond the ruined walls, though the arena remains enclosed in darkness. Dust rests upon the cracked seats and fallen columns, making every surface appear older than the war that damaged it. The scent of smoke has become almost gentle, like a memory held in fabric, while old masonry gives off a dry mineral breath. A weak breeze crosses the highest gallery and descends through the empty aisles, touching your face before passing into the tunnels. Footsteps echo once beneath the floor, pause, and disappear beyond the reach of hearing. The building holds small sounds with unusual patience, allowing them to linger after their sources have gone. Beneath the night sky, the arena waits without expectation, unfinished and unpersuaded. The early games lack the elaborate presentation associated with later games, and that absence makes their political intention easier to see. There is no polished distinction between contestants and performers, no carefully timed pageant, and no landscape designed to make killing seem an attractive form of entertainment. The Capitol has not yet developed the language through which spectacle can disguise punishment as celebration. What exists is a damaged arena, frightened children, uncertain officials, improvised mentorship, and an audience that may still refuse to care. Dr. Gall recognizes that violence alone will not educate the nation, while Coriolanus recognizes that a person may hold attention more powerfully than an institution. Lucy Gray survives at the center of these discoveries, not because the arena is ready for her, but because she makes herself legible within its ruins. Pale sunlight returns through the broken concrete, touching the dust where night has gathered it into shallow ridges. The dry wind moves across cracked seats and carries a coolness that will soon disappear beneath the day's heat. Smoke remains in the air, mixed with old masonry, damp soil, and cloth worn too long without washing. Your footsteps sound softly upon the uneven floor, while distant movement stirs echoes beneath the surviving arches. The walls show every fracture clearly now, each line recording impact, neglect, or the slow pressure of weather. Weeds bend in the open sections of the building, their green leaves appearing almost startling among the grey stones. Around you, the arena becomes visible again without becoming whole. The capital will eventually solve the audience's uncertainty by adding ceremonies, narratives, symbols, and engineered environments that make the games easier to follow. Later game makers will construct wilderness landscapes where the 10th arena offers only rubble, tunnels, broken seats, and remnants of war. They will arrange danger so that violence appears inevitable within the scenery, whereas the early arena shows violence arriving from politics, poverty, and military destruction. The bombing demonstrates how little separates a public ritual from an ordinary attack when the state has not yet learned to control the frame. Lucy Gray's survival gives the capital a glimpse of what personality can accomplish, and Coriolanus's secret food reveals how intimacy may be folded into strategy. The 10th games are crude, but their crudeness points forward, showing precisely what the institution will need to add. Morning air moves across your face through a gap in the outer wall, cool at first and gradually warmed by the rising sun. Dust lifts from the arena floor in small clouds beneath passing feet, then settles upon stone, cloth, and exposed metal. The smell of smoke and old masonry remains strongest near the collapsed sections, where sunlight falls through broken concrete in broad, slanting beams. Above, the cracked seats dry beneath the wind, their surfaces marked by ash and scattered fragments of paper. Footsteps echo through empty tunnels as guards prepare to move the living and identify the dead. The arena offers no music, flowers, or polished announcement to soften the morning. It gives you only light, stone, dust, and the quiet knowledge that the contest has already begun. The 10th Hunger Games do not begin with a single clean instant, because several tributes have died before any formal signal can establish the rules. The bombing has injured people, altered the building, and made every later movement uncertain, while fear continues to circulate through the groups below. Yet the capital must proceed, since abandoning the ritual would suggest that violence can interrupt the state whenever it chooses. Coriolanus watches Lucy Gray move forward with the wary intelligence that has carried her through the ruined arena. She remains a tribute, but she is also a singer, an observer, and a person whose suffering can be made visible to strangers. The audience may still be uninterested, but her presence begins to answer the problem that the capital has not yet learned to name. Sunlight rests upon the broken floor in pale sheets, revealing footprints, bloodstains, ash, and delicate tracks left by insects between stones. A dry wind crosses the cracked seats and sends a little dust over the nearest steps. The air holds the old smell of smoke, mixed with warm concrete and the faint sweetness of weeds growing near the wall. Your hands feel the roughness of masonry whenever you steady yourself against the damaged structure. From the tunnels comes a gradual rhythm of boots, keys, and muted voices, all echoing through chambers built for a city that has changed. The open roof frames a quiet portion of sky, while fragments of concrete cast sharp shadows over the ground. Nothing has been repaired enough to conceal the war. Coriolanus understands that Lucy Gray has become the event's clearest point of attention, though he does not understand how dangerous that knowledge will become. He has supplied food secretly, watched her survive the bombing, and followed the small decisions that distinguish her from the other tributes. His concern now possesses the hardness of strategy, because he measures her safety against his own prospects and reputation. Lucy Gray continues to improvise within the arena's crude boundaries, using observation and nerve where later tributes will use supplies, maps, and designed terrain. The capital sees an opportunity in her, Dr. Gall sees an experiment, and Coriolanus sees someone he wishes to keep. Around them, the 10th games gather their first lasting shape from ruin, hunger, fear, and attention. The day grows warmer, though shadows beneath the damaged galleries remain cool enough to raise a slight chill along your arms. Dust glitters in sunlight falling through broken concrete, then disappears whenever a cloud crosses the open sky. Smoke lingers near the highest fractures, while old masonry gives the air a dry, chalky texture. Wind passes across cracked seats with a steady whisper, stirring scraps of cloth and paper from one row to another. Footsteps echo through empty tunnels behind you, joined by the occasional scrape of a dragged object. The arena's walls cast long shapes over the ground, and the broken sections create unexpected doorways into brightness. Here, every surface speaks plainly of impact, delayed repair, and a war still close enough to smell. The capital must now transform an unwanted spectacle into an institution that citizens will recognize, remember, and eventually anticipate. It will learn to present tributes as characters, arenas as worlds, and violence as a sequence with emotional meaning. It will use mentors, costumes, ceremonies, interviews, and landscapes to solve the problem revealed by the 10th Games. The crude arena has shown that punishment alone cannot secure attention, especially when the audience may decide that the broadcast is not worth watching. Lucy Gray demonstrates that a distinctive person can make distant suffering intimate, while Coriolanus demonstrates how quickly that intimacy can be claimed by ambition. Dr. Gall's experiments will continue to treat fear and violence as political education, but the lessons will be wrapped in greater beauty. Beneath every later improvement, the ruined Capitol arena will remain the institution's exposed foundation. The afternoon wind grows drier as it crosses the cracked seats, carrying warmth from the stone and fine powder from the damaged walls. Sunlight enters through broken concrete above you, falling across weeds, rubble, and marks left by hurried feet. The smell of smoke has faded but not vanished, and old masonry releases its mineral scent whenever the ground is disturbed. In the tunnels, footsteps echo through empty passages before reaching the open chamber as soft, uncertain sounds. Dust settles upon the edges of the seats, forming narrow lines that follow each fracture. The air feels spacious beneath the missing roof, yet the arena remains enclosed by its own history. Beyond the walls, the capital continues its ordinary day, while inside the ruins, the state studies the value of watching. The contest will proceed, and the 10th Games will become a memory that later generations reshape through ceremony and distance. The bombing will be remembered as part of the confusion that preceded the institution's maturity, while the deaths before the formal contest recede beneath more carefully presented killings. The arena itself will eventually disappear beneath new designs, but its damaged concrete reveals what the capital prefers to conceal. These games began in the remains of civil war, not within a finished tradition, and their violence was initially indistinguishable from the political violence surrounding them. Coriolanus watches Lucy Gray survive, secretly feeds her, and begins to understand that attention can be cultivated like a weapon. The capital watches the audience, discovers uncertainty, and begins the slow work of making punishment appear impossible to ignore. The light lowers across the arena, leaving a final brightness upon the highest broken wall. Dust floats through that glow in quiet layers, while the smell of smoke and old masonry settles close to the ground. The dry wind moves across cracked seats, lifts a pale scrap of paper, and carries it into a dark aisle. Your footsteps fade among the stones, joining echoes that have already lost their direction. Beneath the surviving roof, shadows gather around the tunnels and broken sections through which the tributes first entered. The arena remains plain, damaged, and unfinished, with no wilderness landscape to soften its purpose. It stands as a physical record of the war and an early lesson in political theatre. The 10th Games continue within that record, watched by some, ignored by others, and slowly becoming something the capital can control. The 10th Games continue beneath the surviving roof, where the broken arena holds its silence like a room awaiting new furniture. You are standing near the edge of the ruined entrance, while Coriolanus Snow watches the remaining tributes move through dust and shadow. The place is plain, damaged, and unfinished, with no forest, river, or mountain to soften its purpose. You see walls marked by war, tunnels opening beneath them, and pale ground where bodies have already fallen. The capital has not yet learned how to make the arena beautiful, yet it has begun to understand that attention must be guided. Coriolanus is watching for that guidance, even while he tells himself that he is watching for Lucy Gray. The 10th games remain a punishment, but they are becoming a performance, and performance requires a face, a voice, and a story. Beyond the arena, the broadcast room is warmer than the stone enclosure, and clear lamps rest above the interview furniture like small, obedient suns. The air carries sweet perfume, laid thickly over the smell of machinery, dust, hot cables, and the faint metallic scent of old fittings. A microphone waits upon its stand, its dark surface reflecting the light in a narrow gleam. You hear papers shifting across a desk, buttons clicking beneath careful fingers, and distant voices rising through the walls. Somewhere beyond the room, an audience gathers unevenly, restless because nothing has yet persuaded it to care. The lamps warm the backs of the chairs, while the floor remains cool beneath your feet. A technician adjusts a dial, and a clear voice travels through the room before fading into a soft electrical murmur. Lucy Gray has already been seen as a tribute, a girl selected from District 12 and placed inside a damaged arena with little food, little protection, and almost no public interest. Then her singing gives viewers a reason to remember her. You are standing beneath the Capitol lights as she raises her voice, and the word tribute begins to acquire a name, a shape, and a history. Her song carries the coal dust of District 12 into the polished rooms of the Capitol. It recalls a life beyond the cage, though it does not describe that life directly. Coriolanus notices the change at once, because the audience no longer hears an anonymous body waiting to be eliminated. It hears Lucy Gray Baird, a performer with a sorrowful voice, a distinctive manner, and a reason to survive. The sound of her voice seems to alter the furniture around you, although nothing in the room has moved. Warm lamps shine across upholstered chairs, painted panels, and the polished arm of a table. The microphone gathers every tremor, while the broadcast equipment answers with a low, patient hum. Sweet perfume hangs above the machinery, masking dust caught in the carpet and the dry odor of heated wood. Applause begins in one corner, hesitates in another, and then swells unevenly from an audience still deciding what it has witnessed. You can feel attention turning towards the girl, not smoothly, but in small movements of curiosity. Her voice remains clear after the first clapping fades, and the room seems to hold its breath around the final note. Coriolanus understands that Lucy Gray's song has done more than entertain the Capitol. It has created a public identity beyond the word tribute, and that identity can be carried from one room to another. You see him arranging his expressions, choosing his words, and presenting himself as the attentive mentor who alone recognizes her worth. He speaks about Lucy Gray with personal charm, allowing concern to soften his voice, while publicity enlarges its reach. Every appearance gives her a little more presence, and every appearance gives him a little more visibility. The distinction between helping Lucy Gray and promoting Coriolanus's own future grows harder to maintain. He may believe that the two purposes are joined, yet his ambition begins to move beside his sympathy like a second shadow. A folded card lies beside the microphone, and its edges tremble whenever the ventilation system changes direction. You notice the faint warmth of the lamps along your shoulders, with one bright circle resting across the empty interview chair. Dust has settled in the seams of the furniture, although perfume keeps the room strangely sweet. The machinery continues its restrained clicking, recording voices that will be repeated beyond these walls. In the corridor, shoes pass over stone, and their rhythm disappears before it can become a pattern. The audience answers with scattered claps, some slow and dutiful, others quick with genuine interest. Between each sound, the room returns to its soft electrical breathing. The mentors begin communicating with the public on behalf of their tributes, and this changes the meaning of their position. You watch them speak from studios, corridors, and makeshift rooms, translating frightened children into figures the capital can recognize. Their words explain personalities, habits, hardships, and small acts of courage that would otherwise vanish inside the arena. A tribute might be hungry, frightened, clever, stubborn, or tender, and the mentor learns to make those qualities legible. Coriolanus discovers that public affection can be directed towards a person who has not yet won anything. The games begin to depend increasingly upon audience attention, because attention can be measured, gathered, and later transformed into support. The competitors are no longer merely bodies moving through a contest. They are becoming characters within a continuing story. The rustle of sponsor parcels begins quietly, with paper brushing against paper behind a closed door. You hear string tightening around a small package, followed by the careful knock of an object placed inside. Warm lamps illuminate a row of chairs where mentors wait with composed faces and tired eyes. Perfume gathers around the furniture, sweet enough to hide the dust shaken loose by passing feet. From the broadcast room comes a clear voice speaking Lucy Gray's name, and the sound reaches you through a thin wall. Applause rises from the audience in uneven waves, because some viewers remain distracted while others have begun to follow every turn. The room carries the scent of hot machinery, but the parcels smell faintly of cloth, fruit, and paper. The idea of sponsors develops through the mentor's efforts, at first as a practical response to neglect rather than as a formal institution. Coriolanus wants Lucy Gray to receive food, medicine, and useful objects during the games, because survival depends upon more than courage. You see him searching for wealthy listeners, flattering influential people, and shaping each request so that generosity feels like participation. A meal can become evidence of affection, while a small tool can alter the balance between life and death. Food and useful objects can be sent to tributes during the games, provided someone outside the arena cares enough to pay. The parcel itself becomes a message, telling the recipient that an unseen person has been watching. Coriolanus learns that sympathy can be converted into practical support through presentation. The first parcels appear modest beneath the lamps, wrapped in pale paper and tied with thread. You can hear the contents shift when they are lifted, producing a soft, uncertain weight inside the package. The smell of dust remains beneath the sweeter perfume, while hot machinery gives the room a faint iron warmth. Someone opens a tin, and the scent of preserved fruit briefly enters the air before being covered again by flowers. A spoon touches ceramic in a neighboring room, followed by the low murmur of two mentors discussing prices. Applause travels from the broadcast chamber in broken bursts, fading before it reaches the far wall. You stand beside the furniture and sense that these small objects are beginning to carry a larger meaning. The capital audience starts following the contest as a story, and the arena changes because of that attention. You hear conversations about particular tributes rather than about the games as a whole. Viewers ask what Lucy Gray will do next, whether she is frightened, and whether Coriolanus can keep her alive. They remember her songs, her dress, her expressions, and the way she speaks about District 12. The violence becomes more effective when framed by personality, because each danger now threatens someone the audience has learned to distinguish. A death is no longer only an outcome. It becomes a turn in the story forming around a recognizable individual. Coriolanus begins to understand that spectacle requires emotional identification as carefully as it requires force. Warm interview lamps settle upon your face, and make the surrounding room appear softer than it truly is. The furniture carries the polished smell of wax, while dust rests beneath the legs of the chairs. Perfume drifts from the corridor, concealing the stale odor of machinery and the dry fibers of old curtains. Applause swells when a familiar name is spoken, then breaks apart when attention moves elsewhere. The audience is restless, but its restlessness has acquired direction. A clear voice crosses the broadcast room, rises above the ticking equipment, and pauses while listeners decide whether to respond. Somewhere under the floor, a cable vibrates against a pipe, giving the silence a faint mechanical pulse. Interviews and public presentation become important parts of the event. Even before the Capitol designs the elaborate rituals that will appear later. You stand beside Coriolanus as he learns to introduce Lucy Gray with enough warmth to make her memorable and enough restraint to seem sincere. The tribute is presented not merely as a competitor, but as a person with a temperament, a past, and a particular way of meeting danger. Her answers matter because they extend the story beyond the arena walls. A quiet remark can produce sympathy, while a song can give the audience a phrase to carry into the evening. Coriolanus sees that public presentation does not simply describe the games, it helps determine what they mean. The chair beneath you is covered in heavy fabric, softened by many bodies and warmed by the lamps overhead. A narrow table reflects the light in a dull golden strip, with a glass of water waiting near its edge. The air is close, carrying sweet perfume over dust and the faint smell of hot metal. Behind the furniture, the broadcast machinery clicks in measured intervals, as though keeping time for voices that cannot see one another. Applause gathers beyond the door and arrives in uneven movements, sometimes generous, sometimes thin. A clear voice moves through the room with remarkable steadiness, and the sound seems almost separate from the equipment that carries it. The room is still, yet attention is always moving. Lucy Gray uses songs as a form of self-expression and survival, joining the private life she remembers with the public life forced upon her. You hear District 12 within her music, not as a distant label, but as a place of coal, family, grief, and familiar roads. Her songs allow her to preserve something that the games cannot fully organize. They also give the Capitol a way to imagine her without understanding the hardships that shaped her. Coriolanus recognizes the usefulness of this connection, because music links the Capitol episode with her life in District 12. The audience can admire her voice while feeling that it has discovered a hidden world. Lucy Gray, meanwhile, turns performance into shelter, using song to speak when ordinary speech would expose too much. The clear voice passes through the broadcast room and leaves a faint vibration in the wooden panels. You smell warm dust near the lamps, and beneath it the heavy sweetness of perfume from the waiting audience. A chair creaks as someone leans forward, followed by the soft brushing of fabric against fabric. The microphone catches each breath before the instruments carry it through hidden wires. Applause rises unevenly, with a few sharp claps close to you and a deeper rolling sound farther away. The machinery continues beneath everything, steady and impersonal, while the song remains human and difficult to contain. Even after the final note, the room seems to remember its shape. Coriolanus begins to learn that narrative control can be as useful as force, and perhaps more reliable. Force may remove an obstacle, but a narrative can persuade thousands of people to desire a particular outcome. You watch him decide which details to repeat, which dangers to emphasize, and which qualities to leave in gentle shadow. He gives Lucy Gray a history the Capitol can understand, while keeping enough mystery to preserve curiosity. His charm becomes a method, not merely a personal quality, and his publicity becomes a form of strategy. When he speaks for Lucy Gray, he also places himself between her and the audience. The games become a contest of weapons, endurance, sympathy, and interpretation. Paper moves across the table in slow, deliberate strokes as names and requests are recorded. You hear parcels being opened, folded, sealed, and carried away beneath the steady warmth of the interview lamps. Sweet perfume gathers above the dust, though the machinery continues to release a dry scent of heated insulation. Applause begins late after one announcement, then grows when the audience understands that a familiar tribute has received assistance. A clear voice reads the message attached to a parcel, and the words seem more intimate than the room deserves. The sound of string sliding across paper is delicate against the deeper hum of the broadcast equipment. Nothing appears grand, yet every small movement carries consequence. The mentor's efforts encourage the capital's interest through performance and emotional identification, creating a relationship between viewers and tributes that has not existed before. You see the audience choosing favorites, comparing their courage, and discussing the qualities that make one child seem more compelling than another. Lucy Gray's music lets viewers imagine her fears, while Coriolanus's descriptions give those fears a readable pattern. Sympathy becomes selective, and selective sympathy becomes a resource. The audience is not merely watching events, it is helping determine which events deserve attention. The games are learning to feed upon feeling. The broadcast room settles into a gentle mixture of sounds, with paper rustling near your hands and machinery breathing behind the walls. Warm lamps shine over the interview furniture, leaving the corners in a softer brown darkness. Perfume masks dust so successfully that only the tongue notices the dry taste of the room. A distant audience applauds in irregular pulses, as though several different gatherings were responding at once. The clear voice of a presenter passes through the equipment, gains a faint metallic edge, and returns to human warmth. You feel the chair fabric beneath your fingers and the slight vibration of the floor beneath your shoes. Beyond the door, parcels continue their quiet journey. Coriolanus helps convert sympathy into practical support, and Lucy Gray receives more than attention alone. You see food being prepared, objects selected, and messages written by people who may never meet the tribute they have chosen to assist. A sponsor parcel can contain something ordinary, yet inside the arena ordinary things acquire extraordinary value. Bread can become strength, medicine can become another morning, and a useful object can create a moment of safety. Coriolanus presents each need with personal charm, making the request seem both urgent and dignified. His success confirms that the audience can be moved from passive interest towards active involvement. He also discovers that the person who controls the story can influence the flow of resources. The scent of bread appears briefly when a parcel is opened, then mingles with perfume and the dusty warmth of the lamps. You hear a metal container settle against a wooden table, while paper folds around the remaining objects. The furniture remains arranged for interviews, although the room now feels like a place where decisions are being made. Applause rises from beyond the corridor, uneven and slightly delayed, as viewers respond to news traveling through the broadcast. A clear voice repeats Lucy Gray's name, and the name seems to rest for a moment in the warm air. Machinery ticks beneath the floor with a patient rhythm. The parcel closes, and its paper gives one final quiet rustle. As the capital follows Lucy Gray, the distinction between protecting her and advancing Coriolanus's own future grows increasingly uncertain. You watch him become more skilled at appearing generous, more careful in public, and more aware of how every gesture may be remembered. His concern is not false, but it is no longer simple. Lucy Gray's survival would preserve a person he values, while her success would also confirm his talent as a mentor. Each song increases her chances and strengthens his reputation at the same time. The two purposes move together until separating them becomes almost impossible. Coriolanus begins to imagine that influence itself can be engineered, provided the right story is given the right audience. The furniture waits beneath warm lamps, its surfaces glowing while dust gathers in the seams and underneath the cushions. Sweet perfume presses gently against the smell of hot wiring, oil, and old plaster. You hear several voices speaking at once beyond the room, though only fragments reach you through the doorway. Applause swells unevenly when a familiar story is mentioned, then collapses into scattered clapping. A parcel slides across the floor, its contents making a faint wooden knock. The broadcast microphone remains still, yet its small red light suggests that every silence may soon become public. The room feels quiet only because so many sounds have learned to remain beneath speech. The spectacle becomes more effective when violence is framed by personality, and Coriolanus sees this principle taking shape around Lucy Gray. You follow the audience's attention as it moves from the general danger of the arena towards the specific question of whether one known person will endure. Her choices are judged through memory, and her losses are felt through the story already attached to her. Even the damaged arena begins to seem different when viewed through her experience. Its tunnels become threatening because Lucy Gray must enter them, and its broken walls acquire meaning because she must pass beneath them. The violence remains brutal, yet presentation gives it a structure that the capital can repeat. This is the early form of a machine built from attention. A thin layer of dust lies across the floor, disturbed by footsteps crossing between the lamps and interview chairs. Perfume softens the harshness of the machinery, although the room still smells faintly of heated metal and dry paper. Applause moves through the walls like weather arriving from a distant district. The sound grows in one place while remaining faint in another, uneven but persistent. A clear voice crosses the broadcast room and settles briefly over the furniture before disappearing into cables. You hear a chair leg scrape, a pencil touch paper, and a parcel being tied. The atmosphere remains calm, but nothing in it is accidental. The early reforms foreshadow the later system of costumes, interviews, sponsors, and carefully designed arenas. You stand at the beginning of that development, where separate ideas still appear small enough to overlook. A song gives a tribute to public identity, an interview gives that identity a voice, and a sponsor parcel gives the audience a physical role in survival. Costumes will later shape the eye, arenas will shape movement, and presentation will shape the meaning of every danger. For now, Coriolanus sees only fragments, yet the fragments begin to fit. The games can be arranged so that the audience knows whom to admire, when to worry, and how to respond. The event is becoming an institution through repeated choices. Warm lamps rest over the interview furniture, making the cloth appear softer and the polished wood more patient. You smell perfume layered over dust, machinery, and the faint sweetness of fruit left inside an opened parcel. Papers whisper as they are sorted, while distant applause rises and falls without settling into a single rhythm. A clear voice speaks through the broadcast system, its tone softened by the room's heavy curtains. Somewhere nearby, a string snaps loose, and the parcel it held opens with a dry sigh. The equipment gives a low pulse beneath the floor, steady enough to seem like breathing. Light gathers around the chairs, while the surrounding walls remain dim and watchful. Coriolanus begins to imagine the games as an institution that can be engineered, rather than a punishment that merely continues. You watch him consider the arrangement of rooms, the timing of appearances, the needs of viewers, and the impulses of those who provide support. If the audience can be made to care, then caring can be organized. If a tribute can be given a story, then danger can be made legible. If violence is placed inside a carefully shaped narrative, then the capital may find the spectacle difficult to ignore. Coriolanus does not yet possess the later machinery, but he has learned its central principle. The games can be designed around attention, and attention can be directed through personality. The room is warm enough for the lamps to soften the chill from the corridor. You feel cool air moving beneath the door, carrying dust from the machinery rooms and the powdery scent of old plaster. Perfume remains suspended near the furniture, sweet and slightly heavy. Applause reaches you in broken waves, each one shaped by a different section of the audience. The broadcast microphone catches a breath, a pause, and the beginning of another sentence. Parcels rustle on the table as their contents are counted and recorded. Beneath the noises, a faint electrical vibration runs through the walls, giving the quiet a barely perceptible motion. Lucy Gray's music continues to link the Capitol episode with her life in District 12, and that connection gives the spectacle an emotional depth it did not possess before. You hear the contrast between polished rooms and cold, dark memories, between warm lamps and the cold streets she has left behind. Her songs allow the Capitol to approach her history without truly sharing it. They also allow Lucy Gray to carry a piece of home into a place determined to make her unfamiliar. Coriolanus understands that this contrast makes her more compelling because distance can heighten attention. The audience follows her not only through the arena, but between two worlds whose difference has become part of her identity. A clear voice lingers in the broadcast room while the machinery receives each note and sends it towards unseen listeners. Warm lamps make the interview chair glow against the darker wall, and the fabric holds the scent of perfume and dust. Applause begins softly, then swells unevenly as more people recognize the melody. You hear the creak of a wooden floorboard beneath someone standing to see better. A sponsor parcel gives a faint rattle when it is moved beside the microphone. The air feels close around your face, yet the song seems to open a larger space beyond the furniture. When the room becomes quiet again, the equipment continues its patient work. The Capitol's interest is encouraged through performance and emotional identification, but the process also reveals how easily sympathy can be shaped by those who control the presentation. You watch Coriolanus decide which version of Lucy Gray should be made visible. Her courage is emphasized, her uncertainty softened, and her past arranged into details that will travel well among strangers. The audience receives a person, but it receives that person through a frame. Coriolanus learns that the frame may be more influential than the truth it surrounds. He's not yet a master of public opinion, though he has begun to understand its grammar. The games now have a language of names, songs, gestures, interviews, parcels, and carefully placed emotion. The perfume in the room has become familiar, though beneath it you can still detect the dry smell of dust and warm machinery. Lamps cast gentle circles across the furniture, leaving the microphone in a small pool of light. Applause travels from the audience with an uneven softness, as if some listeners are already tired while others remain intent. Paper shifts under a hand, and a pen scratches briefly before stopping. The clear voice of a presenter moves through the room, then becomes distant as a door closes. A parcel rests near your chair, its wrapping slightly creased from being handled. Everything appears calm, yet attention remains the room's hidden current. The Capitol audience has begun to follow the contest as a story, and that habit will make later games far more powerful. You see viewers remembering earlier scenes, predicting future encounters, and choosing loyalties that extend beyond immediate violence. Lucy Gray's singing gives them an entry into her life, while Coriolanus's charm keeps her presence before them. The tributes are recognized as individuals with stories, and this transformation changes the emotional weight of the arena. A person can be mourned, admired, feared, or defended. An anonymous body can only be counted. The difference is small in appearance, yet it becomes the foundation for a system designed to hold attention over many hours. The broadcast room grows quieter as the evening deepens, though the lamps continue to pour warmth over the interview furniture. Sweet perfume masks the smell of dust and machinery, leaving only a faint dryness at the back of your throat. Applause arrives less often now, but each swell is more distinct against the silence. The clear voice carrying through the room sounds close enough to touch, then fades into the equipment's low hum. A paper parcel is folded shut, and its rustle resembles leaves beyond a closed window. You sit near the warm light while shadows collect beneath the chairs. The room holds its many small traces of attention. Coriolanus learns that narrative control can be as useful as force, because it determines how force will be remembered. You watch him connect a tribute's public identity with the audience's willingness to provide food, objects, and continued interest. He recognizes that a sponsor does not merely send assistance. A sponsor confirms that the story has reached someone. The parcel becomes both material support and proof of attention. Lucy Gray's survival, therefore, depends upon her strength, her songs, Coriolanus's publicity, and the emotions of strangers. The arrangement is fragile, but it is also efficient. The capital has discovered that spectators can be made to participate without ever entering the arena. A small object shifts inside a sponsor parcel, producing a dull tap against its container. The lamps remain warm above you, while the furniture gives off the quiet scent of varnish and cloth. Perfume drifts along the corridor, masking dust, stirred by hurried footsteps and the faint heat of the broadcast equipment. Applause swells from several directions, never quite joining into one sound. A clear voice speaks through the microphone with careful calm, and the room seems to arrange itself around the words. The machinery answers with a soft click as the recording continues. Beyond the walls, the capital listens in separate rooms, each receiving the same story through its own silence. The early games were intended to display punishment, but the 10th games begin to display the possibility of design. You are standing within the transition, where a song can change a girl's public identity and a mentor can change the flow of resources. Coriolanus sees that an audience requires more than a battlefield. It requires entrances, explanations, familiar faces, and reasons to return. Interviews and public presentation become important because they prepare the audience to recognize the people placed in danger. Sponsors emerge because recognition can become responsibility, or at least the appearance of responsibility. The later system of costumes, interviews, sponsors, and carefully designed arenas is already present in outline. Its machinery is still rough, but its direction is clear. The warmth of the lamps rests across your hands, while the chair beneath you holds the slight roughness of worn fabric. Dust remains in the corners, hidden beneath perfume and the dry odor of electrical equipment. Applause rises unevenly, then leaves a quiet space behind it. A clear voice continues through the broadcast room, measured and intimate despite the machinery surrounding it. Sponsor parcels rustle as they are placed into rows, each labeled for a person somewhere beyond the walls. You hear strings sliding over paper, a pencil turning, and a distant door closing. The air moves gently through the room, carrying no freshness, only the layered sense of work, attention, and waiting. Lucy Gray uses song as self-expression and survival, while Coriolanus uses charm and publicity to keep her visible to the capital. You see their efforts join without becoming identical. Her music rises from a life that existed before the games, whereas his presentation shapes how that life will be received. Together, they create a figure the audience can remember, discuss, and support. The song gives Lucy Gray a public identity, while the mentor turns that identity into practical protection. Yet the same process gives Coriolanus a place within the story. His future begins to depend upon how successfully he can make another person's suffering meaningful to strangers. Sympathy and ambition now share the same stage. The clear voice has softened by the time it reaches the far side of the broadcast room. Warm lamps shine across empty furniture, and their glow catches particles of dust moving through the air. Perfume remains sweet beneath the faint smell of hot machinery, paper, and old wood. The audience offers occasional applause, uneven and restrained, as though attention is being conserved. A sponsor parcel settles with a small sigh when its contents are placed inside. The microphone stands in its circle of light, waiting for another name or another song. You feel the room's tired warmth around your shoulders, while the walls hold the quiet vibration of the equipment. The room has become still enough for you to hear the delicate movement of air through the vents. Lamps warm the interview furniture, and the polished surfaces reflect small, trembling patches of light. Sweet perfume covers most of the smell of dust, though machinery leaves a faint metallic trace beneath it. Applause rises once, unevenly, then fades into a long hush. A clear voice carries through the broadcast room and settles over the waiting chairs. Sponsor parcels remain nearby, their paper folded and tied, their contents quiet. The air is warm, dry, and close, yet the distant sound of the arena seems to have traveled into it. The 10th games are no longer watched only as a sentence imposed upon conquered districts. You are standing at the point where punishment becomes programming, and where the capital starts to recognize the power of an audience that can be guided. Lucy Gray's songs provide memory, identity, and a bridge between the capital and District 12. Coriolanus's personal charm converts attention into food, useful objects, and continued public interest. The mentors give the tributes voices, while interviews give those voices a place within the larger event. The audience learns to care through performance and emotional identification. Coriolanus learns that narrative control can be as useful as force. Around these discoveries, a new kind of show begins to take shape. The lamps remain bright above the furniture, although the room beyond them has dimmed into brown shadow. Perfume hangs gently over dust, old plaster, and the warmth released by the machinery. Applause comes from far away, uneven and muted by walls that were never built for ceremony. A clear voice moves through the broadcast equipment, carrying a name that has become familiar to the capital. Sponsor parcels rustle when a clerk gathers them into a smaller stack. You hear the faint click of a switch, then the low, settling sound of the room returning to stillness. The furniture waits beneath its warm light, prepared for another interview, another story, and another person to be remembered. Coriolanus has not yet built the later system, but he has recognized that the games can be engineered through attention. You see the first permanent machinery forming from temporary arrangements, personal charm, songs, interviews, parcels, and carefully chosen impressions. Lucy Gray remains a girl from District 12, carrying her music between danger and memory. She's also becoming a public figure shaped by the needs of the capital. The distinction between helping her and promoting himself has grown too narrow to cross without difficulty. Beyond the ruined arena, the broadcast rooms continue their work. The 10th games persist within the record of war, yet the record is beginning to acquire a voice, a rhythm, and a face. The final sounds are small beneath the lamps, with paper settling, machinery cooling, and furniture giving occasional creaks in the quiet. Sweet perfume remains in the air, masking dust without erasing it. A distant audience releases one last uneven movement of applause before becoming still. The clear voice that carried through the broadcast room has withdrawn into silence, leaving a faint afterimage in your thoughts. You stand beside the interview chair while the warm light rests across its empty surface. Somewhere, a sponsor parcel waits to be opened by someone inside the arena. Somewhere else, Lucy Gray's song continues through the memory of a listener. The capital has begun to understand that a story can keep violence alive. Lucy Gray returns from the arena as a victor, carried into the light of the capital while the crowds gather around her name. The 10th Hunger Games have not ended with a body removed from the ground, but with a living girl whose voice, clothing, and sorrow can be carried beyond the broadcast. Her survival gives District 12 its first victor known to the wider story, and the district begins to enter the public imagination through her. You are standing beneath the pale morning sky outside the arena, where the stones retain the night's chill, and the air carries a faint mixture of rain, dust, and extinguished fire. Coal dust rests upon the railway windows beyond the capital station, marking the glass with soft grey smudges as the train waits in silence. The platforms are brighter than the landscape beyond them, polished and carefully watched, while Lucy Gray moves through the gathered officials with the delicate steadiness of someone who has survived by remaining visible. Around you, the capital's banners hang without movement, their colours rich beneath the lamps, and the cold metal beneath your hands seems strangely clean. Coriolanus Snow has helped Lucy Gray survive, though his assistance is never simple enough to be called kindness alone. He has found sponsors, shaped public attention, interpreted danger, and placed her before the audience as a person rather than merely a tribute. The food he arranged, the water he secured, and the story he helped construct around her life have all contributed to her victory. Her triumph improves Coriolanus's social position, allowing him to return among capital families with a reputation sharpened by success. As the train moves southward, the country gradually loses the capital's polish, and you watch the city withdraw behind layers of mist and darkening track. Coal dust thickens upon the windows, dulling the view until every distant shape appears softened and grey. Beyond the tracks, green hills rise in long, quiet folds, their slopes dark beneath cloud, while rain gathers in narrow streams along the glass. The carriage remains warm for a time, carrying the fading warmth of a capital coat across the colder southern landscape. Beneath the cloth, your hands remember velvet seats, bright rooms, and the measured comfort of a world built to keep hardship at a distance. Coriolanus travels with Lucy Gray towards District 12 after the Games, entering a region that is poor, remote, and shaped by coal mining. The district lies far from the capital, not only in distance, but in habit, language, expectation, and memory. He has previously encountered its people as tributes, reduced by the arena into names, costumes, wounds, and brief images upon a screen. Now he must see District 12 as a place where people wake, work, trade, sing, quarrel, and endure long after the audience has turned away. Rain has settled around the district roads, darkening the earth and making the packed ground shine beneath the wheels. You pass low houses with roofs dulled by weather, fences leaning into the wet, and narrow paths where water gathers beside worn boots. The green hills beyond the tracks appear close enough to touch, yet their calm surfaces conceal the labor beneath the earth. A thin smell of coal mingles with wet soil, smoke, and timber, while droplets slip down the railway windows in uneven lines. The colder air enters whenever a door opens, carrying the quiet of the southern country into rooms designed for the warmth of the capital. The landscape contrasts sharply with capital reconstruction and privilege. In the capital, damage can be covered with fresh stone, bright fabric, new machinery, and a confident story about recovery. In District 12, hardship remains visible upon walls, clothing, roads, hands, and faces. The houses do not present poverty as an image arranged for sympathy, and the mines do not become distant symbols once the broadcast has ended. Coriolanus encounters the physical conditions that have shaped the people he once judged from a protected distance. A modest room receives you with the smell of damp wood and old cloth, while rain taps gently against a window whose frame has swollen with the season. A guitar rests near the wall, its polished surface marked by use rather than display, and its quiet strings answer whenever the floor shifts beneath a passing foot. The light is brown and soft, filtered through wet glass, and a curtain repaired more than once. Coal dust lies in the corners of the room, gathered like a second kind of shadow. Somewhere beyond the house, water moves along the road, and the hills hold their green silence beneath the low sky. Coriolanus encounters the Covey and Lucy Gray's local world, discovering that her identity cannot be contained by the arena's image. The Covey are musicians, travelers in memory if not always in movement, and their presence reveals a community held together by performance, affection, loss, and shared history. Lucy Gray is not simply the wounded girl who sang for the capital. She belongs to songs, friendships, rivalries, family stories, and places where people know the shape of her voice before any screen has carried it elsewhere. The room grows quieter when the guitar is lifted, and the first notes travel across the walls with a softness that leaves space around each sound. You sit near the window, feeling the rough grain of the chair beneath your fingers, while the rain continues its patient work upon the roof. The instrument does not fill the room completely, because its music seems to make the silence more distinct. A sleeve brushes against the guitar's wooden body, a string trembles after the hand has moved away, and the smell of wet earth enters whenever the door opens onto the district road. The journey exposes the limits of Coriolanus's understanding of district life. He knows the language of hierarchy, the value of appearances, and the danger of being seen as weak. He does not yet understand the quiet economy of deprivation, the intimacy of shared food, or the ways a song can preserve a person after institutions have forgotten them. District 12 teaches him that survival is not always performed before an audience, and that people may possess forms of loyalty which cannot be purchased through capital currency. Outside, the railway lies dark beneath the rain, with coal dust clinging to every pane and metal surface. You walk beside the tracks where puddles reflect broken pieces of sky, and the green hills beyond District 12 seem to breathe beneath their coverings of mist. The air tastes faintly of iron and smoke, while wet earth presses up through the grass with a deep, mineral scent. Your coat still holds traces of capital warmth, though the fabric has begun to cool at the shoulders. Each step carries you farther from polished corridors and closer to a landscape where labor has settled into the walls. Lucy Gray's victory makes her valuable to the capital, but it also makes her dangerous to Coriolanus. Her popularity creates opportunities for him, while her independence creates uncertainty. He has helped shape the conditions of her survival, and part of him feels that this help grants him a claim upon her future. His attachment is mixed with fear of losing control, so affection and possession begin to occupy the same narrow space. A guitar's quiet strings sound from the adjoining room, one after another, with pauses that seem as important as the notes themselves. You rest beside a wall that remains cool despite the small fire, listening to the soft movement of people speaking beyond the doorway. Rainwater runs from the eaves in steady threads, striking the ground with a muted rhythm. The room smells of wool, ash, and damp earth, and the wooden table bears shallow marks from knives, cups, and many years of ordinary use. Nothing glitters, yet every surface seems to hold the memory of hands. Trust between the two characters begins to fracture under secrecy and suspicion. Coriolanus conceals parts of his past, his motives, and the choices that have carried him from the arena into District 12. Lucy Gray senses the movement of concealment around him, though she does not always know which danger lies behind each silence. Their closeness becomes less secure because it depends upon withheld information, fear disguised as concern, and the belief that one person can manage the life of another. Along the district road, rain turns the soil dark and smooth, leaving shallow impressions where carts and boots have passed. You move beneath bare branches whose drops fall slowly after the wind has gone, touching your coat with a cool weight. The green hills beyond the tracks disappear and return as mist shifts across their slopes. Coal dust darkens the lower edges of the houses, while a small lantern burns behind one window, its amber reflection trembling in a puddle. From somewhere nearby comes a single guitar note, too distant to identify, followed by the long hush of wet fields. Coriolanus's choices increasingly concern betrayal, self-preservation, and political ambition. He does not become an authoritarian through one sudden revelation, nor does the story explain his future through a single wound or moment of corruption. Instead, his future is presented as a sequence of choices, each made under pressure and then defended as necessary. He learns to value control because control seems to protect him, and he protects himself until protection becomes indistinguishable from power. The fading warmth of a capital coat lies across your shoulders as you stand near the station, though the southern cold has entered through the seams. Cold dust has gathered upon the railway windows, turning the passing hills into green blurs beneath a grey sky. Rain lies upon the platform in thin sheets, and the wet earth beyond the tracks releases a smell that is both dark and clean. A porter closes a carriage door with careful hands, while the distant mine remains hidden behind cloud. The last warmth of the capital feels temporary here, like a lamp carried into a wide and patient night. Coriolanus chooses the path that protects his own future. The decision grows from fear, but fear alone does not determine it. He weighs the danger, imagines the consequences, and recognizes that another course might preserve trust or honor at a cost to his ambition. He chooses otherwise. In that choice, Lucy Gray becomes less a person whose safety matters for its own sake and more a threat to the life he intends to build. The house is quiet beneath the rain, and the guitar rests against the wall with its strings catching a weak stripe of afternoon light. You feel the roughness of the floorboards through the soles of your shoes, while damp air moves beneath the door. The smell of coal smoke has settled into the curtains, blending with wool, old paper, and wet soil. Outside, water gathers in the road and reflects the dark outlines of fences. A narrow path leads away between the houses, vanishing beneath the green hills that surround District 12. Lucy Gray's exact fate after the story remains deliberately uncertain within the wider canon. Her disappearance may be understood through several possibilities, none of which can be held with complete confidence. That uncertainty preserves the strange quality of her story, because she becomes both a remembered singer and an absence around which others continue to speculate. Coriolanus survives into history as a ruler, while Lucy Gray remains partly beyond his reach, protected by the gaps in the record. Night settles over the district with little ceremony, covering the road, the houses, and the distant tracks in a soft darkness. You hear rain loosening from the roof, drop by drop, while the earth below gives back the smell of grass and coal. The guitar has fallen silent, but its presence remains in the room, shaped by the curve of the wood and the faint shine along its strings. A cold draft touches your face, and the last warmth held by the capital coat fades beneath the southern air. Beyond the window, the hills are only darker forms beneath the sky. The 10th Hunger Games help establish the mentor's role in shaping public attention. Coriolanus's influence over Lucy Gray shows the capital that tributes can be presented through narratives of personality, suffering, charm, and hope. The mentor is no longer merely attached to a competitor as an administrative convenience. The mentor becomes a maker of meaning, arranging the distance between the arena and the audience until violence can be received as a story. Morning returns to District 12 beneath a thin veil of mist, and the railway windows carry fresh traces of coal dust from the night trains. You watch the green hills beyond the tracks brighten slowly as clouds lift from their slopes. Wet earth glistens beside the road, with small pools gathered around stones and broken boards. The air is cool enough to keep your hands folded close to the body, while a guitar sounds faintly from a modest room behind you. Its notes rise without urgency, blending with the distant clank of mine machinery. The game's later sophistication grows from experiments made during this crude edition. The food, sponsors, interviews, costumes, and attention given to individual tributes begin as uncertain arrangements rather than a finished system. What later becomes ceremony and spectacle is first tested through improvisation, persuasion, and the accidental discovery that the audience prefers a person to an anonymous body. The 10th games, therefore, contain the early shape of the institution that will dominate Panem for generations. A pale light lies across the station floor, revealing tracks where boots have carried rain indoors. You stand near the carriage and feel the wooden handle of your case beneath your palm, smooth from repeated use. Coal dust freckles the window beside you, while the hills beyond remain intensely green under the clearing weather. Water drips from the carriage roof in a patient sequence, and the earth beside the tracks smells of roots, mud, and old ash. Your coat has lost almost all its capital warmth, yet its fabric still remembers the bright rooms from which the journey began. Coriolanus carries District 12 away with him, though he does not carry its lessons in the form Lucy Gray might have hoped. He has seen poverty, affection, music, labor, and danger at close range, yet he interprets them through the question of what they may cost him. The district's humanity does not lead him towards solidarity. Instead, it teaches him how much must be controlled if his position is to remain secure. The road shines beneath a weakening rain, reflecting small windows and pale strips of sky between the clouds. You pass the modest room where the guitar's quiet strings have stopped vibrating, and the silence there feels almost physical. Damp wool hangs near the hearth, giving off a faint animal warmth, while coal smoke drifts low across the yards. Beyond the tracks, green hills gather light along their upper edges. A bird moves through the wet branches, and the earth answers with the deep scent of leaves returning to themselves. The closing movement returns to the games, a ritual that has learned to survive by becoming entertainment. The arena remains a place of death, but the capital begins to understand that death alone cannot secure attention. It needs faces, voices, hopes, rivalries, and moments arranged so spectators can feel involved. Through Lucy Gray, the games discover that a victor can continue the performance after leaving the arena, and that a story can make cruelty seem almost intimate. You are again near the arena, where morning light rests upon the empty seats, and the floor bears marks that no amount of cleaning can fully erase. The air is still, touched by dust, and the faint metallic scent of old machinery. Somewhere beyond the walls, rain falls upon the capital streets, but inside the great structure, the sound arrives as a distant murmur. A broadcast room waits with its lamps and polished surfaces, prepared to turn another life into an image. The warmth of the capital returns here, though it feels less like comfort than carefully maintained temperature. Lucy Gray wins the 10th Hunger Games, and her victory travels farther than the arena itself. District 12 receives a name within the story through her survival, while Coriolanus receives a stronger place within the society that will eventually depend upon his ambition. He has assisted her, traveled with her, feared her independence, and finally chosen his own future. Their connection does not vanish because it was false. It becomes tragic because something genuine has been placed inside a structure built upon possession, secrecy, and power. The final rain slides from the railway windows, leaving coal dust in irregular patterns across the glass. Beyond the tracks, the green hills of District 12 remain quiet beneath a whitening sky, and the roads begin to dry where sunlight touches them. In the modest room, the guitar's quiet strings wait beneath a thin layer of dust, holding the possibility of music without producing a sound. The southern air remains cold, yet the wet earth carries a gentle warmth from below. Far away, the capital's lamps begin to glow, and the distance between privilege and hardship settles once more across the land. The 10th Games do not yet possess the polished machinery of their later years, but they have discovered the principle that will sustain them. A ritual survives when it learns to adapt, and the games adapt by becoming a story people wish to follow. Coriolanus recognizes this possibility before he fully understands its cost. His later authoritarianism grows through repeated decisions, each one narrowing the world, until control appears necessary, natural, and even merciful. Silence gathers around the empty arena, softening the hard edges of stone and metal. You stand beneath the high ceiling while a last pale reflection moves across the floor, as though daylight has forgotten where to leave. The air smells faintly of dust, rain, and the extinguished fires of the city beyond. No guitar sounds now, no train passes, and no crowd remains to give shape to the applause. Yet the memory of Lucy Gray's voice continues through the quiet, carried by the same attention that once made the games visible. The story has closed its doors, while the ritual waits for another beginning.